Ladies and gentlemen, it is Thursday night, our new night, and you know what that means. It's time for another edition of Hey, did you see this one? I was going to wish you a happy birthday, but then I was like, but we also use these. I sometimes use these for other stuff, and I was like, maybe I'll use. It's like
well,
that.
Next week's show is on my actual birthday, so how about you save it till then?
But it's like remember a couple.
It was just funny because you said and on.
It's like a couple weeks ago where I was like, hey, because I forgot what I was talking about.
Right. I think that was last week, actually.
That was last week, and this time I was
like every week.
I panicked. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the new Thursday night for Hey, did you see this one? It is Steve's birthday month. Hello, and welcome to Steve's birthday month. Do you have a name for this month?
Woo! I mean, let's call it isolation. Isolation May. May I isolate you for a moment?
Isolation Mation.
May I isolate you for the duration of a feature-length film?
You know, we do like wordy names here on the show, so we'll figure
something out. Can I bother you for an isolation?
Can I? Okay.
Could I trouble you for an isolation?
You gotta fit May in there somehow.
How about isolation? How about nisolation?
Masolation?
Nisolation.
May I trouble you
like
for
nice isolation. Nisolation. Yeah.
Isolation. It's nice to be isolated. Anyway, that was a lot. We are talking The Sphere. Nope, not The Sphere, just Sphere.
It's just Sphere.
Starring Dustin Hoffman and Sharon Stone and Sam Jackson and a young Liev Schreiber and that dude who's in a bunch of shit who plays Ted. He is a face you will recognize. I can't remember his name.
He's also a voice you'll recognize. He's got a great voice, that man.
And
it's like the good kind of authoritarian voice that you like to hear in a movie, and when he's like giving you instructions or directions or telling you to shut up, you're actually like, oh, okay. I will. And it's not even like a deep or scary voice. It's just like he has a very serious cadence.
Stu?
I mean, you could just open up the Wikipedia.
Just before Steve is your host, as it is.
Yeah, it's
birthday.
Me, Steve. His name's Peter Cote.
Peter Cote. Before we get to
Peter
Steve hosting, I just want to say that this movie makes no fucking sense as far as the casting goes. This should have been like some young up and comers, but then again, it is a Michael Crichton book put to screen.
Yeah, but it also the casting makes the movie 10,000 times better than it would have been if it wasn't them.
Or you change the movie and still have this cast. Anyway, we'll talk about all of this and more tonight when we talk about Sphere from 1998. And here's your host for this evening, the birthday boy, incarnate Steve. Take it away.
Hello,
Take it away, Steve.
I've been summoned. It's me, incarnate Steve, here to isolate you for the month of May. I've chosen 4 movies for this month that are basically the idea is a bunch of people get stuck in a situation that's difficult to deal with, and they either all die or a couple of them live, or who knows. We'll see what happens in the other movies that I've chosen. But needless to say, they're mostly science fiction horror. I'm thinking about changing one of them to something a little bit more dramatic, but with the same idea behind it. We'll talk about that later this month, or after the show, not on air. But the first movie this month...
the viewers want to know now.
Well, I'm thinking because there's a movie that I haven't seen on my list, and that's why I chose it, because I thought it would be interesting for us to do something that we haven't seen before, any of us. And I'm sure that the two of you haven't watched it because it's something that I would watch, but I'm like, these two guys would never watch this shit unless I made them do it.
Hey, maybe I...
Maybe I did watch it. Who knows? I watch everything.
Kalen is it's weird. I always find it weird when he hasn't seen a movie, and then I'm like, well, now you got to watch the movie, and then he does So,
But also, Kalen, you also seem like the kind of guy that if you watch a trailer for something that spooks you a little bit, you're like, I'm not going to watch that. I don't want to watch that shit by myself.
Am I chopping up? I think I might be on Wi-Fi instead
You
of
are
data.
chopping up a little bit.
you're a little chopsters.
Here,
If
wait
you
a
need
second.
to-
Yeah,
if
why
need
don't
to
you
talk
figure
about
that
it,
out while I keep doing the intro? So
Yeah, my bad.
the first movie that I chose was Sphere. Actually, the first movie that I chose was not Sphere. We switched it because a guest is going to come in for the other movie. But Sphere is one of those movies that I saw quite young, but it was scary enough that I was terrified while watching it, and then got through it. Very much like Jurassic Park when I was a kid. I was on the cusp of that age where I'm like, this movie's going to scare the shit out of me. And then I watched all of it and was like, oh, I'm not scared to go to bed. I'm not terrified that a Tyrannosaurus Rex is going to rip me out of my bed.
fucking rip your roof off. And
after I watched this, I wasn't
Out of a
like
porta potty.
terrified that a sphere was going to come in my window and manifest all my neyightmares. This movie seems like something that would scare me more like later in life when I was having like existential
it has
crises
its
and stuff.
moments in that respect. Like a couple times I was even like, ugh.
Yeah, there are some pretty decent, frightening moments. They're not like jump out of your seat scary, but they're frightening. They're like weirdly uncomfortable, and you're like, oh my god, and you're imagining like that would be the worst way to die.
The sound design for certain things too were like really well done to make just to like turn that freakiness up a bit.
And all the acting is good. It's like everybody feels believable to a point, and then we'll talk about it as we go through it, but like it gets a little bit crazy near the end. But anyway, Sphere, the movie Sphere, starring, like you said, Sam Jackson, Dustin Hoffman, and Sharon Stone. I would say that Sam Jackson steals the show in this movie, even though he's not technically the main character. I think one of the main issues with this movie is that there isn't really a main character at all. And anyway, I'm going to start going into analytics mode. So I'll start with myself, I guess, for the first time I saw it. The first time I saw this movie, I remember it was like my parents rented it, and they're like, "It's PG-13. He'll be fine. It's not going to be too scary." And I was terrified just because of the music and the cinematography and the fact that they're like isolated underwater. I'm very scared of water in general.
How old were you in 1998? Like 10?
Yeah, I was 9.
Yeah. This
Or wait,
movie would
was I
fuck up
9?
a 9-year-old.
I was
sure.
10. No, I was 10. Yeah.
Because even PG-13 movies are like back then in the 90s were like could be fucking nightmares very easily.
Yeah, and like especially when it's a psychological horror, which is like when I was a kid, gross, gory shit, like it was disturbing to me, but it wasn't terrifying to me. But like psychological stuff really messed me up. I remember the first time I saw The Shining, I was like a teenager, and I was like, Dad, can you come sleep on the couch in my room, please? I can't handle this. But yeah, the first time I saw it, I fell asleep while they were watching it. Like I got so worked up that I like went into like a terror frenzy and like fell asleep. And but I kept waking up throughout. And the music in this movie is very intense. It's made by what's his name? Elliot Goldenthal.
It straddles a line between Nightmare and Disney.
Well, it's Elliot Goldenthal who made the music for Batman and Batman Returns and Batman Forever. Not Batman Returns, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. So it's a lot of that like crazy like horns and shit. And like anytime something intense is happening in this movie, it's very it's very propped up by the music that's accompanying it. And it's very stressful. So like I'd be lying there and I'd wake up and I would just hear these like trumpets and French horns and like trilling crazy music with Dustin Hoffman being like, "We're going to fuck." And so you'd wake up and then you put your head under the blanket and you fall asleep again. But it kind of vanished in my mind for a long time. And then in my teenage years, I revisited it and I was like, this movie's kind of boring. And then in my early 20s, I was like, this movie's kind of interesting. And then like in my adult life, I was like, this movie is both interesting and stupid as fuck.
It's dumb as
and
fuck.
I like it.
But it's cool.
Like it.
It's weird.
Yeah,
it's
cool.
like, yeah.
It's Barry Levinson and he knows how to make a good movie, but he kind of shines in drama, right? Like he doesn't really make a ton of action movies, but I don't know. This movie holds like a weird special place in my heart as one of those movies that I kind of was always aware of throughout my life, but didn't really appreciate until later. and then I forgot about it after I appreciated it, and now it's back for this podcast on episode 1 of Nisolation Month. That's it. We're calling it Nisolation. And how about we go with Kaylin next? You tell us your first adventure into the sphere.
Hey, my first time adventuring into the sphere, it said, no, get out of here.
Your reflection was like, it didn't smile at you. Yeah.
I did watch it for the first time on Monday. And as we'll talk about it, but I was captivated the whole time, but I was left like kind of confused sort of a little bit. So I went again. I'm pretty sure I went again yesterday. And then I went again a little bit today when I had some free time.
Yeah. I mean, the confusion I understand, because it does get really confusing at the end. And if you really pay attention to everything that they say, like, you're like, okay, I understand what you're telling me, but I don't understand what you fucking mean by that. Like, what do you mean by that? And it doesn't make sense. None of it really makes sense at the end. But anyway, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, to that point, it's very well. Like I said, we'll get into it, or like you said, we'll get into it. But the thing that, so I watched it for the first time yesterday. I sat and watched it. I had to finish it up on my lunch hour today. I watched the third act while I was eating lunch today, and it was.
Yeah, it's like watching a whole other movie.
It is, and you're right. Like that ending. So what happened was I'm watching the movie, and then it like seems like it's gonna end. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this seems like a good ending point. They're heading towards the submarine, and then I'm like, how is there 25 minutes left in this fucking movie? And then it's crazy for that whole 20 minutes, right? To your point about I lost my train of thought about what you were just talking about because I had a point. But
the last confusion, the convolution,
like the confusion of that last bit where like they just start saying manifest so many times that it almost is a parody of itself. Like it almost feels like a Trey Parker.
I'm going to steal your theory corner. Sorry to interrupt. Cool. I'm going to steal your theory corner.
Absolutely.
Not yet.
It feels like a Trey Parker and Matt Stone stealing a concept from a thing for an episode of South Park at times, in how much they're like, and then you manifest this, and then you're manifesting. We're all manifesting at the same time. So why don't we all forget? Why don't we all forget by manifesting that we forget? And then that last scene of them sitting there, like looking out the window, and they've all clearly forgotten, and then the fucking thing flies up into space. It's so weird.
The Sphere. Don't call it the Thing. That's a different movie.
And I wonder...
a different Nisolation.
Yeah, a different Nisolation movie that this movie's clearly inspired by. Ooh. But the thing that I noticed about all of it is it's very, like, where Jurassic Park is a Spielberg movie, you know, it's very, like, big and grand, and it feels very, like... a crazy summer action movie.
All you have to do is go lean into the mic and go bum 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 da, 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 da,
this feels very much like an adaptation of a book. Like this feels like very literary.
But it also feels like an adaptation of a book that they couldn't quite figure out how to properly adapt and like take the words from the page and translate it into images.
A lot of the dialogue
correctly,
is very like you can see it explained in words and then put on screen. There's a really great scene, a really great touch where Norman, like where Dustin Hoffman's swimming down to like get the breather thing.
He smashes his head.
Whacks his head, and then I almost feel like they put that in the movie so the director's like, you better pay attention to every little thing because later when he reemerges out of the water, his head's bleeding. You might be like, what the fuck? Why is his head bleeding?
I honestly think that maybe like continuity wise, they caught him because that looked real. It didn't look like he accidentally.
A stunt actor fucking beamed himself by accident.
But I think that was actually Dustin Hoffman because it's a very close scene and it's clearly him. And like I can't imagine a stunt performer hitting his head and going like this, and then being like, oh fuck, and then like trying to find his way out of the water. You know, like so I think he did hit his head, and then later they're just like, you know what, let's just put some blood on your head and. You know, it makes sense. Or maybe he did 10 takes and like they use the one where he smashed his head because they're like, why is his head bleeding?
Good.
And like, we'll use the one where you bumped your head. Remember that?
Yeah, it's good.
In summation, I just watched it yesterday.
So both of you guys have never seen it before. That's interesting to me because this is one of
Never
those
even
movies.
heard of it.
Never heard
But
of it. I remember the cover
Yeah.
of this movie, sort of like I remember seeing it on like the shelf at Blockbuster. But like at that time, even like I've never really been into sci-fi.
This was late enough that when we would go into Blockbuster as a kid, it might be playing on the screens.
Yeah.
Like the trailer or whatever would be playing on the screens for it.
I never really, if I hadn't known in the 90s, like if I didn't, in 1998 I was 13 or 14, so like if I had known it was by the same writer of Jurassic Park, I might have been much more.
I don't think they advertised it that way. It probably would have got a lot more money.
Exactly, but I think if I had known that, I might have been.
But
more
it does feel like
likely to
his
pick
sort
it
of
up.
very high concept idea, right? Like
Yeah.
Jurassic Park is like an extremely high concept idea. It's like we're gonna make an amusement park where we bring dinosaurs back to life. This is like we find a spaceship underwater, but it ain't the kind of spaceship you think it's gonna be.
It kind of felt like a mix between like Stargate and Event Horizon is what the vibes I got from this movie.
Yeah, and I think Event Horizon came out slightly before this movie, but this movie was filming while Event Horizon came out. I remember during I listened to the commentary with Sam Jackson, and he's like, I remember seeing the trailer for Event Horizon on my way to filming my first day on this and being like, I guess this is kind of what we're shooting.
You know how they do, like often in cinema, they'll have sister movies, like they'll have a main movie and then like sort of a similar movie.
It's because there's like mold in every fucking
Exactly.
studio
This
where
might
they
have
hear a
been-
movie's getting made.
This might have been
Is that what it is?
This might have been that too.
Yeah,
Well, whenever
everyone in
there's a
Hollywood's
volcano,
connected, and they hear there's a volcano movie being made. Another
make
studio's going to make a volcano
make an
movie.
end of the world movie or make a fucking disaster movie. And it's like there's got to be two of them, especially if it's going to be the big movie of the summer. There's always like the main one and then like the secondary one.
But it's also like
knockoff.
if that one knocks it out of the park, then the second one, it's going to at least break even because people want to see another volcano movie, right? It makes sense.
It's a tactic.
Like, I remember when I was a kid. I was like, "It doesn't make any sense. Why are there two at the same time? Is everybody wishing on a genie or some shit?" I'm like, "No, there's just like some guy who's telling everybody what's going on."
Hollywood's very incestuous when it comes to that kind of stuff. You can there's like casting call magazines that you can get in Hollywood to like find out the casting calls for things, and you can find out all the movies that are being made.
And you can still see it now. Like it doesn't happen as much anymore, but it's like it's different. Like, you know, the Suicide Squad and the Guardians of the Galaxies came out, they very close together, and there's a reason for that, you know, like they're seeing each other's success and trying to like keep up with each other. Anyway, let's get into the movie. And not the business of making movies.
I'm in the business of watching movies.
We could have the time loop movies.
What?
Never mind.
You know what they should make? A crime loop movie. Oh yeah, they did. It's called Looper. Carry on.
Okay.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
So the movie opens with some kind of cool credits and a lot of foreshadowing in the credits, which I really enjoyed.
Squid.
Well, it's like, you know, illustrations from old novels, right? Like 2000 Leagues Under the Sea and all that kind of stuff. And 100 million
2,000 leagues under the sea
into
is
the
slightly
space.
different. That's like like less than a kilometer, I think. Scuba diving.
Yeah. Scuba diving under the sea. So my train of thought has been broken. Oh, but it's also like broken by bubbles, and you know the characters' names are, you know, bubbling up, and I forgot that this was a Michael Crichton not inspired by, like, direct adaptation. He was a producer on the movie, so he was there every day being like, yep.
Oh,
I think he's also one of those guys that, like, he writes books, people buy them, and then, you know, screenwriters read them and are like, this would make a great movie, and he's like, yeah, give me $20 million and I gotta be on set, and he's just on set to get that extra huge paycheck of being a producer, and he does not give a fuck what you do to his book. He's like, yeah, of course. Of course do that.
Do you think that he considers himself a modern day like Isaac Asimov? Like, because all of his sci-fi is like high concept sci-fi.
I think he thinks of himself as like a creative person who figured out how to tap into the zeitgeist of like populist filmmakers who he's like, I'm going to write these books that will become popular amongst people, smart people, and then, you know, smart directors and smart screenwriters are going to read them and be like, I can make this into a movie. He writes books like they're going to be movies.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they are the books are smarter than the movies are, but his books usually get adapted into like smart sci-fi, or at least
he's
like
kind of like a Tom Clancy in that respect, then, where he's writing to like have his shit adapted for a certain
except Tom
audience.
Clancy like wears like a naval hat while he's on his typewriter or some
stolen
shit.
valor incarnate.
But you know what? At the same time, I feel like Michael
right?
Crichton probably has dinosaur bones behind him a locked cabinet while he's writing books.
He's got $100 million. He definitely has.
Well, I think he's dead.
T-Rex
so.
skull. He was buried with a T-Rex skull, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, he waited until they excavated a dinosaur skeleton, and then he said, "Bury me in the hole where you get the bones." And then he was buried with his dinosaurs. That's rude to say about somebody who's dead. But anyway, the movie starts with a pretty good old-timey credit scene from the 90s, which we have talked on this show many a time that we do enjoy, and we kind of miss a little bit. We don't get them as much anymore.
The bubble effect?
Yeah, but this one actually had like appropriate foreshadowing, almost to like a Sam Raimi level of
the background images and stuff.
Yeah, and like you don't really. So I watched this with Danny, and Danny did not know what was going on. Like, kept being like, "What is this movie about?" I'm like, "I don't want to tell you because if I tell you, it's gonna ruin the entire movie. So just watch." Yeah. And then even Danny was like, "Oh, that's why they showed all the books, the pictures of the squids at the beginning." I'm like, "Yeah, it's because it's part of the movie." And then we cut from that to Dustin Hoffman in a helicopter with a helicopter pilot. He's asleep and he wakes up, and then we get a nice bit of not necessarily exhibition, but like an intro to his character where he is sort of out of the loop, but then the helicopter pilot is asking him a lot of questions, being like, "You slept through the whole flight. I didn't get to talk to you. I've been flying this whole fucking time."
Is that helicopter pilot fucking like Huey Lewis or some shit? He looked super familiar.
I don't know. I didn't look it up. Cameo. I also thought this guy looks familiar, but I didn't look it up. There was a couple of times where I did look up stuff, but
that's when I got this. Yeah, it's Huey Lewis.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. Kayla, you did that way too quickly.
I have the cat. I have it on
okay. Just want to make sure.
Because back in the day, I would feel bad not saying people's names. So now I got a little list of the cast ready every time.
Huey Lewis, yeah, it is him too. I knew it was him because
you doubted me.
Oh wait, yeah, no, it's right here on my screen too. It says Huey Lewis, and then it says "and the news."
And the news. The whole news
they were the
there.
Ones.
And he's like, "It's hip to be a square."
They were the other Navy guys.
And then Patrick Bateman came over and went, like the meme.
But there are so few actors in this movie that like the entire cast is filled. You don't even have to go to like other cast because there's so few people in the movie.
Like a handful.
They're all here. Like even just like the random guy who like walks them down the hallway at the beginning is like credited on the front page.
The guy with the fucking.
It's Bernard Hawk.
Yeah, he's got those fucking glasses, right?
Everybody has glasses at this part. This is the weirdest part in this movie where I was like, what do the glasses represent? Because everybody's wearing glasses, and then they start asking about the glasses, and I'm like, are the glasses like the eyes, like the protection to your like brain or your soul or some shit?
It didn't seem like there's a payoff to it.
Me neither. There's a joke later.
There is a little joke.
A tiny joke, but it did seem like important because even when Barnes is introduced, he's wearing like those classic sort of like MIB style glasses, like the dark sunglasses. And I'm like, everybody so far has been wearing glasses. And I kept going and going. And the only two people that weren't wearing glasses were Harry and Beth. And then quickly everybody's not wearing glasses except for Norman.
It's like maybe the OSSA agents are like, that's just maybe they are kind of like FBI, and that's just like their look.
But only one was wearing sunglasses. Everyone was just wearing glasses, like regular glasses, like eyeglasses.
Yeah.
And then Liev Schreiber, when he's like in the, when they do the sort of physical on all, they're like, do you need the glasses? And he's like, well, I don't actually need them. They're for reading mostly. In fact, I shouldn't be wearing them right now. I can see just fine.
Yeah, that whole bit was weird. Like, can you not wear glasses that far under the ocean? But also, like, why does Dustin Hoffman sneak glasses down there? And there's that moment where he's like, "You brought your glasses?" I thought
he's like, they let you keep those? Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. All of this seems very crazy. There were parts in this movie where, like, Kaylin, I think I know what your theory corner is going to be, because there's points in this movie where I'm like, even before all the twists and reveals in the third act, I'm like, what the fuck is going on in this down here?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It feels a lot like Event Horizon in that respect, where you're like, what is like real and what isn't, but they haven't given you any concrete things to latch onto. Like,
but one of the things that one of the things that I like is that very quickly you realize that every single character is super, super duper smart. Like everyone is. Yeah. It's not like Event Horizon where there's a couple of idiots on deck for some reason. They brought these idiots along.
Or like the Thing. It's got the Thing vibe too, where they're all
or Alien even. Like Alien, they're a bunch of truck drivers in space. Aliens, they're like a bunch of dumb Marines in space. Yeah.
Can we talk to that? He said he kind of basically made it up or whatever, but that actually seems like a good lineup of specialists or to have for that type of situation.
Except that he based his writings on Rob Sterling.
They felt a lot like
he wrote Twilight Zone or something, right?
He's the narrator for Twilight Zone.
They felt a lot like,
consider if you will,
the Fantastic Four.
Within a door.
Did you get that vibe from the group of the 4 main scientists?
Yeah, he's like, one of them's fiery, one of them's a stone-hearted bitch.
Well, I wrote in my notes, I was like, if Samuel L. Jackson fucking turns to stone, I'm turning this movie off. But they felt very much like, and right down to the, like, when they see the sphere and then they go back and they go to bed, but then one dude has to get up and
I feel like we're going all over the place.
We are a little bit, but I wanted to... Okay, sorry, Steve, you're the host.
Yeah, we're going from you're like skipping from the intro of Dustin Hoffman in the helicopter to the end of the movie. That's right. So let's like get it on the tracks here.
This is a remake of the Fantastic Four. Shitty Fantastic Four is a ripoff of this movie. Anyway, go ahead. I'll get to
Event Horizon's on the list, right?
It is, yeah. So I just wanted to say, like, I think that it's a good intro for Dustin Hoffman's character. He thinks he's going to help survivors of a plane crash. And he's like, I don't see any wreckage of the plane crash. And the helicopter pilot's like, it's hip to be square. He's also like, what do you mean plane crash? And the pilot's like curious about him, so it gives us information about the character, which is like always nice. It doesn't feel like it's being shoved down your throat or into your head about who the character is when it's two people just interacting comfortably and normally in like an everyday. If you were in a helicopter and the helicopter pilot was asking you questions, you'd probably be pretty open because you're like, I'm not going to be guarded against this helicopter pilot. Like he's not a spy, right? And then, we get some more sort of back and forth of all the characters. Liev Schreiber is clearly neurotic and is nervous, but we just get a glimpse into that at first, and then we also see that Dustin Hoffman has some sort of relationship with Sharon Stone, but we don't really get too far into that yet. We just see him being like, what? Beth, why are you here? What the heck is going on? And then we go to the
after he says he's trying to call his wife.
Yeah. And so, if you're like an astute viewer, then you're going to like pick up on that for sure. Or if you've watched it 3 times in 1 week, Kaylin. He's like, wait a minute. But then we kind of clip to the psych exam after Dustin Hoffman meets Barnes. And the psych exam is pretty interesting because you get a little bit of all the characters again. You get their attitude, you get what they're willing to just like be free with, or what they're going to get tripped up on. It's a good introduction of the characters, I think. Like, and you know which ones are going to be important because you've met several already, but you meet each one of them only for like less than 10 seconds each. But you kind of get a good understanding of who they are. Like Liev Schreiber being like, "What do you mean? I don't need to bring the glasses if you don't want me to." Like he's like so excited to go underwater that he's willing to just like huck his glasses to him. Like, I don't need my glasses. I don't need them at all. And Sam Jackson is like, the only injury that I've ever had is like my knee got fucked up and I've got a bunch of pins in it. And so you're like, oh, so he's just like direct and he doesn't have a lot to hide. It's just like, physical injuries. And then you get Sharon Stone where it's like, okay, she maybe has more deeper injury, mental injury.
They keep being like, what meds do you take? What meds?
Wait till you hear my theory.
Like, I might take a piece of a Xanax sometimes or something, and then and it's like, you got into a drunk driving accident. She's like, yeah, and he's like, or no, it's like, I got into a car accident. It's like, were you drinking? Yeah, but I wasn't. I wasn't driving. Which is like funny, smart, and also like she's being a smart ass, right? Like
Sharon
she could have just said no, because
Sharon Stone was low key my favorite part of this movie because like her and Dustin Hoffman do not need this role, and for them to actually put in the effort made me like respect them. This felt like
Dustin Hoffman has also worked with Barry Levinson several times before,
okay.
So he's like,
that explains
this is my friend, and I work well with him. So
you wouldn't expect Sharon Stone and Dustin Hoffman to be in sort of a medium budget sci-fi thing, but them not phone. I can't tell if they're just so good at acting that like they were phoning it in and we didn't notice, or if
I don't think anybody was phoning it in. I think they all were there for it. But I do think that, like, because I do notice a few scenes where I'm like, I think this is improv.
Yeah,
like, it doesn't seem scripted, right? And I kind of like that because, like, if I feel like they're having a real conversation and it's looping a little bit, I'm like, that's not written. Because when something is too structurally written, you're like, that felt very
Dustin
scripted
Hoffman
and
reacts in a few times, like he reacts in a way that feels a lot like. He's not. Like,
it's weird. So
just,
like
they're just having like an improv conversation.
And
like the director would just go. Like this is
okay,
the
but like you're saying that about Sharon Stone and Dustin Hoffman. I would say that Sam Jackson and Dustin Hoffman have the most realistic back and forth, where it's like a cheeky weirdo
I wasn't being specific.
and a guy.
I was talking about the acting style in general for like.
But I mean, like,
Liev Schreiber was like a new actor, and he felt very wooden. Like he felt like. He was.
I disagree. I think he was great. Okay. I think he's one of the best parts of this movie.
but his stuff felt like it's very scripted. Comparatively.
Watch it a second time.
Okay, I do want to watch this movie again, like legitimately, because it has that. I want to see if there's stuff at the beginning. Now, you know what I mean.
I will say that there are moments that feel very like. It's me, Liev Schreiber. I'm here to do this very specific thing. But I also feel like it's organic within the dynamic of the entire group. Yeah. Like they need that one guy to be doing that, so the rest of them can be like, "All right, man, you wrote a fucking Oprah Winfrey's bestseller version of physics. You know, like just calm down." And he's
fucking
like,
nerd.
God damn it, yeah. And like he's like trying really hard to like make people laugh or like make people like him, but he also cares about everybody. It's nice, man. The dynamic between the four of them is nice.
How did he figure out the spherical keyboard?
Let's wait till we get to the spherical keyboard before we start asking about it. Okay? How about that?
Okay.
Okay. How about this? This is appropriate for the time of the movie that we're at. When they go down, well, I'm going to my notes now. When they go down and we're right before they all
have anxiety. Everyone's having an anxiety attack,
like,
and it's
right
great.
before that. Right before the anxiety attack, where it's like, he was sitting next to her. I love that they do that movie thing where they explain the ending, like right at the beginning. They're like, if the pressure gets too high, somebody's gonna explode, and also the only way out of there is a mini submarine.
Oh, I forgot to say the guy who does that whole speech when they're in that room, and he's like, basically, you got to do this, this, and this, and it like trails off. So this is a question like Danny was like, how do they know how to do all this scuba diving and shit? And I was like, well, that guy, like his whole speech seemed like it was going a little bit too long, and then it trails off and fades out.
Yeah.
And to me, that implies that he spoke for like another 12 hours. They were all like, oh God, we got to listen to this fucking guy. But fun piece of information from the Sam Jackson commentary is that originally the guy who did that speech was the person who designed the helmets, the scuba helmets, like the whole suit that they would wear underwater. And he was not an actor. He was like a prop engineer. And he was like this older guy, and they had to keep doing it in bits. And like Sam Jackson was like, he did a fine job. Like we saw it and it looked fine, but like they had to keep cutting back and forth because he couldn't remember his lines. Yeah. And so in reshoots, they got this guy, James Pickens, who is like Sam Jackson's like friend from a specific theater group in New York, and he came in and he just like redid the whole thing, just kind of like sad but funny. And the guy kind of killed it.
He also looked familiar, like he looked like
he's in lots of stuff,
like a character actor kind of guy.
He's a journeyman actor for sure. Anyway, I just wanted to share that little fun piece of commentary.
I like that we watched this crazy movie and you have the commentary like a little extra for it because I feel like that enhances a movie like this. That's so like, I want to know what was going through Dustin Hoffman's head this whole time because Dustin Hoffman plays this character really weird.
I can tell you what he was thinking. He's like, I don't want to be in an action movie. I hate action movies. I'm doing it for Barry, but I did like Sam Jackson.
Yeah, and also I don't know if you guys are familiar with the professional wrestler Ric Flair. But Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, he also at the end of the commentary yelled, "Bring me Peter Pan."
The way he talks in this movie, he sounds exactly like Ric Flair sounds like now when he's just talking. And I was like, how can we make a biopic with Dustin Hoffman playing Ric Flair? And I'm like, they're both too old. Like Ric Flair is now in his 70s, and so is Dustin Hoffman.
So what it would have to be is like it would be like Ric Flair is not in the movie and Dustin Hoffman is playing Ric Flair on his deathbed telling a story about him being younger.
Fuck, there you go. You figured it out. And then it goes back to like the 60s when Ric Flair got into wrestling.
Yeah, and then you get like the guy from The Walking Dead who has the podcast now to play Ric Flair or whatever.
Who? Andrew Lincoln?
I don't know. Meatbag Face. I can't remember his name.
Meatbag Face?
He always looks like in most movies he's beat up, so he's all bloody and hamburger face.
Andrew
he's the Punisher in the Marvel TV show.
Shane fucking John Bernthal.
Listen, he's a handsome man, but in most shows he's like got a broken bridge of his nose and is bleeding.
It's true.
Constantly.
He does usually have a broken nose. I think his character is nose broken guy in most things.
He usually shows up on the set and he's already like he's done his own makeup and he's like, "This is what you guys wanted, right? I saved you 6 hours of makeup work."
He always does his acting style is going like this.
He's also a good actor.
He's a great actor. I love John Bernthal. Shout out to John Bernthal if you're watching. But you
so after the scene where they get everything is explained to them, which I thought was good because it trails off, which is fun, and then they get more stuff explained to them in the sub by Barnes, which again is like it's those like 90s movie things where they're like, we're gonna explain things to the bare minimum, but then like some mom will hear that and then like say that to their kid one day and then the kid will have nightmares forever. Like when he's like, you'll basically explode, and like that's something my mom would tell me when I was a kid, and I would assume that if you came up too quickly from under the water you would just burst like a balloon.
I've told this story on the show before, I think, but like when I was a kid I had like it was just like an itch in my nose, and I was like, what does it mean if your brain itches? And she's like, that means you have brain cancer. And now I'm wondering if she just heard that in a movie, like
your mom definitely heard that in a movie. She saw like it's like that thing, the Canadian Heritage moment where the woman's like, I smell burnt toast or whatever, and it's like anytime you smell burnt toast it means you're having a fucking stroke. Like I don't think that's true. Also, like, wouldn't that just mean like you would smell anything if you're having a stroke? Is it specifically burnt toast, or is it like I smell dog shit? Does anyone else smell the dog shit? And you just fall over having a stroke.
It has to be the burnt toast area of your brain.
Yeah, it's the burnt toast region of your frontal.
Everybody's
cortex.
Got one. It's huge. Yeah,
exactly. It's right beside the medulla oblongata.
Yeah. I'm doing Adam Sandler month next year. You better watch out.
Why do you like doing comedy movies? They suck to talk about. Anyway,
sorry, I'm kidding.
How do you guys feel about title cards?
Is it going to be a whole month of us going like
It is. We're gonna just watch Little Nicky 4 times
in the sub. They're all having anxiety attacks. Every single one of them is having an anxiety attack, and you can see it on their faces. And they're all good actors, and they're all doing it very well. The best part is when Liev Schreiber says, "Stop it, Harry, stop it." And Harry is just like looks over at him like he's mad. But it's like he's using his coping mechanism. Liev doesn't have one except to maybe shit on Harry. Maybe that's his coping mechanism, right? And then Norman is just like being the dad, being like, okay, my coping mechanism is that I'm going to make sure that everybody else knows what's going on and why they're scared. And then we all can assume that Sharon Stone popped like fucking 10 Xanax before she got on the sub.
She was whacked on Xanny bars
she
all
definitely
day.
Did.
I really liked
bottle later.
I liked this scene because you learn a lot about the characters, but also when I'm on an airplane, I have a lot of anxiety for like the plane just randomly falling out of the sky. I think I would be much more scared to be going underwater, like so far down, because like the claustrophobia is part of why I don't like flying. But underwater,
but also like they don't have commercial submarines, right?
Exactly.
There's a reason we don't like transport people via sub.
Yeah, because it's dangerous. It's more dangerous than air travel.
The water will attack the structural integrity.
Yeah, where they're like, it's like, what's that noise? That's
the sound of the water pressure attacking the integrity of the submarine's structure. Yeah, that's obviously like a segue to Sharon Stone's line. It feels kind of forced to me, but like at the same time, it's like this is also the evidence that she's on some sort of like relaxant, right? Because she's so easily able to be like, you must be familiar with that, Norman. Having something attack the integrity of someone's career or whatever, something like that. Like, I can't remember what she says, but it's like basically that. She basically says, fuck you.
But
and
this scene leads into potentially the worst scene in the whole movie, which made me
Fun fact, though, about the scene in the sub. Liev Schreiber and Sam Jackson were not privy to the information in the script about that moment, so their reactions when she says that and them going back and forth are real.
It's funny you should say that, because there are some moments in this movie that felt very much like the old fact about Alien, where the chest burster scene was like they just did it and filmed it, and that's why everybody reacted that way.
One thing that he said a lot during the commentary was like, we would on a daily basis go into Barry's office and we would change things and not tell everybody so that we could get a weird, genuine reaction out of another person, like by just acting weird on set.
Yeah,
it's like, that's kind of cool.
For a psychological thriller, it works well because you don't have to have like a big moment like the chest burster. You can just have an act, like during a live scene, an actor say something weird and just have everybody react to it.
And everybody
what the
look
fuck are you
over
talking about?
Yeah,
but it's a psychological horror, so like it works in the context of that acting style.
I think that he also said that he and Dustin Hoffman every morning would have breakfast together and like hang out for an hour, and they would just like improv back and forth as their characters to one another, so that when they would have their conversations on set, it seemed so much more natural because they wouldn't follow the script per se. They would just kind of like talk to each other. And that whole part that I think, Kaylin, you mentioned earlier, where he's talking about like, why the hell would you get, a mathematician, a biologist, like, like that whole scene where they're in the hallway, like at close quarters, it was written, but they didn't do anything that was written. They just improv the whole scene back and forth to make it seem more natural, which is probably why I like this movie so much, because everybody seems like real, but they're also like mega geniuses.
Do you like title cards?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like these title cards?
So I think that the fading to black in this movie is good because it gives you like an emotional and mental cleanser. But it also,
you don't feel it breaks up the pacing though, like.
But it's breaking it up.
That's part of the thing I was talking about in the beginning, where it feels very literary. It felt like a new chapter.
Chapters.
Video games do it. Modern gaming does it too, where I didn't like it at first. Like a decade ago, I was like, man, stop breaking my JRPGs up into chapters. But now,
Quentin does it great.
I kind of like it.
So wait, what is your point? Are you saying you do or don't like it, Kalen?
I personally did not like it in this.
I think that I will go halfway towards what you're saying, because there are moments that I kind of wish they didn't do it, but there are moments where it was like so.
There are some
appropriate and good. So
like you said, like it cleanses the palate or whatever kind of thing.
But it also introduces a new sort of emotion in your brain, being like, I have now an expectation for something that I didn't know based on the title card. Like,
in retrospect now, though, when it switches to the monster's bit goes on for longer than the actual monster bit, because then they start turning on each other shortly after that. So I feel like
it's because they are the monsters.
They're the monsters, which of course is dumb to say like that. But when you're watching a movie and movies a lot is about discovery and realization a lot of the time, right? Yeah. Like you're like, oh fuck. When you look back on a movie, it's better than when you're going into a movie sometimes. But in this, it's like I wanted to just know what was going to happen next, because it was so crazy. Seeing Dustin Hoffman in a sci-fi action.
Jerry, calm down. Ding, 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 ding.
Also,
Norman.
About 10 minutes ago, 37 minutes and 38 seconds.
Really?
What? I had 33 minutes and 15 seconds.
33 minutes is what I wrote down.
Did I get it wrong? Maybe.
You missed the first time they said it, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. What happened was everybody sat down at a table, and then somebody opened a curtain, and then a guy said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Sphere." It was like 33 minutes and 15 seconds.
He said the thing.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about when they get to the actual underwater station and they do
and everybody's talking in
the
helium voice
part.
Yeah.
I hated it.
I don't speak balloon.
You hated
bro.
it? I thought it was nice.
It felt forced. It felt like maybe it felt like they took too many like trying to be funny liberties, but their content wasn't funny. I hate helium humor.
What? Everyone loves
hate helium humor. Okay. Never mind.
Everyone
I gotta go to the
loves
washroom.
helium.
I'll be right back.
You're crazy.
I'll just talk about how I didn't like this scene for a second. I thought it was goofy. I thought that the Lollipop Guild reference sucked. Sam Jackson is above that. I feel like they dwelled on it for a little bit too long. I cringed, in fact. And to bookend the scene with them going like, get your voice changed back to normal, apparatus. You know, like that was also like, what are you fucking talking about?
That's how it's like it reminded me of Ghost of Mars, where they're like, oh yeah, you can take this thing so you can breathe the atmosphere.
Yeah,
it's like a way of dealing with that without having to come up with some kind of expensive solution.
In Batman, in the Christopher Nolan movies, they explain why he's got that gravelly voice, but they explain it in the Gotham Knight like anime, like the Animatrix shorts. And they explain it that
you hate helium humor.
Lucius Fox just gives him a little voice box changer thing, and that's just how they explain it away. That's why he's like, "Where's Rachel?"
Well, would you prefer that the entire movie they sound like they have helium voices?
Yes.
Or? Oh, okay.
Oh my God! There's a giant tentacle squid outside.
You're coming.
Queen Latifah just got killed by squids.
Also racist. The first death.
Oh God!
I mean, it was the 90s.
And sexist.
Well, that's not a trope, but the first thing.
Also, the only people working on the space station, the underwater, the extremely advanced underwater habitat were both like female women of color. So I don't know if that's racist. That's maybe kind of progressive.
That is progressive.
No, it was because they I don't even want to say it. It's so racist.
Stop.
Jeez, he almost said the word you can't say.
No, I wasn't going to say a word. I was going to say that it's a risky thing to go down there, so they want to use someone expendable.
Oh my God!
Jesus
No, you have to be a genius to go down there.
Yeah.
Cameron. Stop this.
This isn't
Also,
like
I was upset.
Movie.
But also, there's a lot of this movie that didn't get explored. Those characters were meant to have much more in-depth, bigger parts, and they didn't.
You guys
get
know if
to.
the book? Have either of you read the book?
No.
Is the book even called Sphere?
You think Jason has read the book and he hadn't even seen the
what is
fucking
that supposed
yet?
to mean?
Oh, I feel like in your intro you would have mentioned that you read the book.
That is true. If any of us had read the book, we would have said, well, I read the book and the book was better. I don't know. This feels a little bit phoned in by Michael Crichton, if I'm being honest. It's that he
phoned in his book
he had
report.
He had a concept and worked backwards from it.
He's like, so here's the story. You got your typewriter in front of you. Here we go. Once upon a time there was
an ocean, and at the bottom there was the sphere. The end. You figured it out, you fucking jamoke.
Before we get past the helium chamber thing, they all had something to say in the chamber about, you know, the helium reaction that was happening. And Sam Jackson did not have something to say. And he was like, my character was the only thing that didn't have anything to say. And they're panning around. And then when it came to me, I made a face and they stopped. And I said, follow the yellow brick road. And that's because it's the only thing that I could think of. But it's also, if you're in a room full of scientists and they're all talking in helium voice, being like, well, it's having an effect on you. And like everyone's like jargon science. Like, you don't have anything to say. What else are you going to say? What would you say?
We represent the lollipop.
It's the same movie. You're still quoting the same fucking movie.
Yeah,
what would you say, Jason?
I would say my voice has helium in it, and this is the sound of my voice on helium. Can we get to the next scene, please?
Yeah, and then a bunch of slime would fall on Jason's head, and everyone would be like, he got slime for being lame.
If you guys come across any sulfur hexafluoride, can you let me know / get it, and then I'll arrange to get it from you?
In my head, I thought you already did this. You ended up getting the flock of
Not yet. I'm working on it.
And
Flicky,
I thought you made a video of you with low voice. I thought this happened already.
Soon.
Also, I'm pretty sure that is way more dangerous than helium, isn't it?
No, they do it on the news, morning news.
Go to the morning news and call up John.
I'm sure they have people there just in case. Kalen's like at home, just like.
Oh well, you got to make sure you breathe like regular air. Also, you got to take breaks.
We come back next week and Kalen has an eye patch on. He's like, so I found it, but I no longer have a left
got a
eye.
Scar that starts at like here.
Yeah. Okay, so Jason hated helium bit. I thought it was kind of a fun, jovial moment before horror. And like, well, maybe Jason, again, you said you want to watch this movie again. You might enjoy that moment a little bit more because it's the only moment where all four of them laugh together. They never laugh together again.
That's true. That's true. Norman sees unspeakable atrocities happen one after another, and he's just like pacing at one point. And I'm like, oh, okay. Geniuses don't really react to horrible atrocities the way a normal person was, because he's probably trying to like. So yeah, that's a good point. And knowing that Sam,
I'm not trying
Jackson,
to change your mind. I'm just
no,
saying.
I know,
like,
but knowing
I
Sam,
have seen the movie several times.
Knowing Sam Jackson improv'd that because he had nothing else to say kind of adds a layer to it that I appreciate, because maybe that's what. Maybe I picked up on the genuineness of it and sort of it rubbed me the wrong way because of how genuine it was. I hated it. I was like, oh man, are they not going to put in like weird bad jokes the whole time? But no, you're right.
They
Almost
don't. There's no other bad jokes the rest of the movie.
There's
like,
a couple jokes.
Very
there's
short.
No more direct. There's no more direct references to the Wizard of Oz.
No.
Let's just say that much. But this scene follows into, I think, one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie, which is a bunch of smart people crowded around a monitor, speculating and discussing with one another. And no matter what the movie, I mean, sorry, I shouldn't say no matter what the movie, but like in a movie that is sort of elevated, which I think this is based on the director, the actors, the cinematography, the production value in general, a bunch of smart people sitting around a computer just spouting theories back and forth when you know that, you're leading into a suspense thriller, science fiction horror, that they're probably all wrong, but maybe one of them will be right in something that they say. It's fun, and it's almost always fun. Like because it makes it a little bit spookier and scary. Like they're saying things that are kind of horrifying, but they're saying it genuinely because it's a real concern, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this is when Sam Jackson's character becomes my favorite, because he does it over and over and over and over and over again until the moment that he says like, damn, I wish I could get in that sphere. Like he keeps doing it over and over again, saying things that are like technically accurate, but sort of scary and morbid. And I don't know how much you guys remember about the scene where they're all crowded around and like they're like, well, am I the only one who should say this, that maybe we shouldn't go in there? Like, why would we go? And everyone's like, well, why wouldn't we go in there? It's like, well, everybody thinks that we're gonna find intelligent life, and they're going to be like little green men or insect-like, but they're going to be more or less human. But what if these things, inhale oxygen and expel, cyanide gas? Like, it's completely plausible based on the way that we evolved. It could be how they evolved.
Sounds like a regular Friday night. Am I right?
All right.
But also, yeah, I know what you're saying. Like I like the concept of aliens in movies. I like the concept of people speculating about what aliens are in movies and not automatically being just a humanoid. Like Arrival was like that, where there's these big weird discs, and those are the things they're trying to communicate with, and those are the aliens. And then the whole world sort of fights.
The aliens are inside those discs.
They're also,
yeah, I guess that's
point,
true. They go in, and they're those weird, like almost like Independence Day tall, gangly monsters.
I mean, I guess like what I mean to say is that like the specific scene in movies like this where there's a bunch of smart people who we've already sort of learned to like a little bit. Like everybody has a little bit to like about them so far. Yeah. And now they're all kind of competing over who's going to say what and who's going to be the most important person to speak. And I don't know, like I can think of like other movies, like Alien has the same sort of factor to it, right? Like Ellen Ripley is constantly and consistently saying the right thing throughout the entire movie, but nobody's fucking listening to her. And it's like, geez, man, maybe you should have listened to her because she's the only one that lives, her and the cat. And this is another example of the fading to black sort of being effective, because like somebody says something at the end of the scene where they're all speculating and it fades to black, and then they're like, they jump down into the. There's no need for them to fade to black at that moment because they're literally putting their suits on and they jump into the water and it fades to black and then it's them entering the water. Like they're in the same area. It's specifically for effect for you to be like, okay,
Yeah, okay.
Now we're on to the next point.
Now we're gonna go look at this ship that looks like it kind of looks like a giant version of the ships from Stargate. It also, the back end of the ship, it very shortly after this, it's revealed that it's potentially a ship that's from our Earth, like our timeline, just in the future.
I don't know if you guys have ever played Mass Effect. Have you ever played Mass Effect?
Yeah, I know.
There's this capital ship in Mass Effect it's the Asari ship, which is the race that's been around longer than everything else. And the ship is like this giant fin with like this capsule in the middle. And it looks like that. It looks like what they have, which is just that's like almost like these two fins that like one's underwater and the other one's under the ground.
What I also noticed about it too is the like big, what I guess would be the thrusters, looked a lot like a Star Destroyer from Star Wars.
But it also looks like a plane fin because like even when they're coming down, I don't remember what my first thought was when I saw this movie the first time. I probably would have been like, "Whoa, that's big," but watching it, for the whatever amount of time this time, I was like, that does look very human. Like it looks like a human designed this.
When they go into it too, it looks very like that's the thing I want to talk about right here actually about this whole movie. The set design in this, much like we'll get to this when we talk about Event Horizon, but it's very grounded in reality and very practical. There's a lot of very practical elements. There are some matte paintings sometimes, but like it felt like when they were walking underwater that they just took like a pool and just fucking made it look like the bottom of the ocean and had people just literally trudge across this.
That's another thing that Sam Jackson was talking about. He's like, so every time you see just the four of us or five of us walking alone, every time you see a rock or like a pipe, there's like 10 people hiding behind that to run out and help us at any point. There's like 60 people in scuba gear down there to make sure we don't drown.
And I loved how they could have. This is an era where they were just jamming CGI into places because they could, and this movie has the big gross CGI sphere, but the sphere looks good because they just spent all the CGI money on that sphere. So the sphere actually
there's actually a lot more CGI than you think. They just figured out how to hide it.
And then there's that element where they it's like a touch up. It's like the opposite of Fifth Element, where Element.
It's easier to make something look good in grimy bottom of the ocean misty water than like a clear lagoon or some
like
shit.
The snake. The snake was very clearly practical.
It's like a little somebody who had a wand.
Yeah, like a little thing. But then sometimes you could tell that there was a little bit of like touch up. It swims
I think
away
that
at one point.
I think the jellyfish is like the most impressive part of the movie because there are millions of jellyfish at that point, and like they're predominantly are CG. The ones that are like going in front of her face and like in the camera, there's people are just jiggling stuff in front of the camera. But the ones that are like punk, punk, hitting her, it's all CG. Mm-hmm. Watching it on Blu-ray, and I'm like, that's CG, but I had to squint to figure it out. I'm like, that is a CG. That's a CG. But like, I could have just laid there and relaxed and been like, don't worry about it, and I probably wouldn't have noticed. But it is the first time I have noticed. Like in my brain, every other time, I'm like, I can't remember how they did that. Did they have a bunch of like billowy jelly flaps that they just like had flipping around in the water?
To go back to the ship a little bit though, like I it's Star Wars Day, and at work today we have like these screens all over the office that people just put shit on just throughout the day. And we watched a bunch, but just Star Wars was on all day. So I watched a bunch of Mandalorian, but then when I was leaving, Rogue One was on, and there's a really cool scene where a Star Destroyer like appears and very slowly like comes out and gets revealed, and it's one of the cleanest looking Star Destroyers in any of the movies.
Is it the part where it like comes out of hyperspace and then like, but it like appears in another ship and the other ship like splits off the side of it? That's pretty fucking dope.
That's dope. But this was the one right where Ben Mendelsohn is like it's right before he gets chewed out by by Tarkin. Is that the fucking
by a CGI man?
Tarkin?
Yeah.
It's right before that where I don't know if it was the one where it splits off. I think it appears in front of the Death Star.
No, that's
actually.
the end battle. Yeah, it's the end battle.
But it looked so clean, and those thrusters. They show the thrusters.
Well, I believe that in that movie, not to like cut you off, but I believe that they did the hybrid of miniatures and CG in that movie because they can, And that we've got $1 billion budget.
Thrusters on the ship reminded me of. It stuck in my head so much because it looked so ominous. Like I can close my eyes. It's like underwater, so it's like grimy and like that. They really nailed the feeling of being underwater in this movie.
They did, yeah, because they were, for the most part, they were actually underwater. They just had to dress the sets with sand and rocks and stuff, right? And they trained them all. Sam Jackson was talking about in training for doing the scuba stuff. All 4 of them, they on a daily basis for weeks, and even like before they had to shoot in the afternoon, they would do it in the morning. They'd have specifically for when they had to go into that, the airlock where the doors like turn and they have to go inside and then it drains. They had to do these like relay races where the 4 of them would be in a pool. And they'd have like an egg on a spoon, and they'd have to like run as fast as they could across the pool and go through hoops and underneath ropes and stuff. And they'd have to keep the spoon on there. And Sam Jackson was like, Dustin always won. I don't know why. Maybe because he's shorter than everyone. he would do like
he's just a
more
little guy.
Stable. Yeah, he would just be able to do stabler.
Sam Jackson is like 6'2".
Yeah, but they would do all these practices to make sure that they wouldn't, when they're going into that tube, like hit the backpack, because like they just, not only because it's dangerous, because if you hit the backpack, that's where all your oxygen is, but they didn't want to fuck it up when they're filming, right? Like we're filming underwater, it's harder, more expensive, so let's not fuck these takes up. And yeah, you're right. The reason it looks great is because they're actually underwater, and like it's easy to fake being in space, but it's so much harder to fake being underwater. You cannot fake it.
As a hilarious side note, my guess at Sam Jackson's height was exactly spot on.
How about his age? Guess his age.
He is 71, I believe.
He's 73, I think, or 74 almost.
Well, I'm going by the last time I checked, which was
several years ago.
Oh yeah, he's 74 now. Happy birthday, Sam Jackson. He turned 74 in December.
There we go.
He is older than Denzel Washington, but nope, that's it. That's the end of the sentence.
Yeah. He also said a funny thing, which was because he was coming off of another movie where he had like his hair was all grown out and it was like dyed pure white. I can't remember what the movie was called. It was like Love Viper or some shit. I don't
was
remember.
it Black Snake Moan? Or was that
No. That was way.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about Sam Jackson, his hair.
During the filming of this movie?
No, what movie was he coming off of?
Wasn't he doing Jackie Brown?
No.
Well, that's like 96, isn't it?
Yeah, that was 94, I believe. But it was not a Tarantino movie. It was a Tarantino movie I would have remembered and known and been able to tell you. But it was some other movie called like Love Letter Red or something, or Red Love Letter or something like that. I don't know the movie. I've never seen it.
The Red Violin?
The Red Violin, yes, that's the one. Yes. And he had white hair, and he had like his hair on the side and his hair on top. And he came in for this movie, and they're like, "Yeah." Barry Levinson was like, "Just fucking shave it off." Yeah. And he shaved it off, and he has never grown it back since. This is the movie that like convinced him that like being pure bald was like the best.
What was the movie that made him say "motherfucker" a lot? I guess that was Pulp Fiction. And he doesn't say
Tarantino. That was Quentin Tarantino, not a movie. Just Quentin Tarantino himself.
But he doesn't even swear in this movie.
No, he does. I think "damn" is the closest thing that he says. Damn, I gotta get in that sphere. Anyway,
I gotta get in that sphere.
So the relay games, yeah, they trained for the tube and stuff. It's pretty interesting, pretty cool. It's one of those things that makes you like, I can understand, Kalen, how you're like, it would be fun to be an actor, and like this is one of those things that made me think like, yeah, it would really be fun to be an actor. Like you get to be trained to like do scuba stuff and like run underwater with a egg and like try and win against Liev Schreiber and Sharon Stone. Yeah, but you can't beat Dustin Hoffman.
Luckily, before Liev Schreiber was a jacked juice freak.
No,
So-
but even that was another thing that he said during the commentary was like, but Liev, like, you know, he was young and full of energy, so he was doing backflips and shit, but he always dropped his egg. So like, Liev Schreiber's just doing backflips with these like crazy heavy suits. Anyway,
he looks man. Liev Schreiber, like, I didn't realize he was like in stuff before, like, X-Men movies.
Oh man, we got to
the
put
one
mixed
X-Men
nuts.
movie he was in.
Yeah.
We got to put mixed nuts on.
He was actually. I remember
Chris
seeing the
stuff.
trailer for the Wolverine movie Origins or whatever, and being excited that it was him. I was like, "What? Liev Schreiber is?" Because like, he's good, man. He was a good '90s hottie. He was like a young hottie, man. He was always good. He's not. He's in that show a couple of years ago. He's not really doing much.
Well, he was in that show. He was in.
He should have came back as Sabretooth in every other.
Yeah.
Like in the Old Man Logan movie, if he came back as Sabretooth, I would have been.
He was
so
Ray
jacked.
Donovan for like 10 years. I think that show's still going.
Imagine in Old Man Logan the movie, instead of them making him fight Young Man Logan, he fought Sabretooth. That would be so fucking cool. And if he was played by Liev Schreiber, that would have been even cooler.
Well, we still have the Deadpool kills the MC or kills
I
the.
don't care about that shit.
Look, I feel like
Fuck
they
off.
have to have Liev Schreiber in that because of his roles.
It'll be him like he'll be like playing Liev Schreiber, and he'll like be like put the newspaper down and be like, "Oh God, only in New York" or something. You know, like he'll say something.
Do you know what's
like
crazy about Liev Schreiber? Even in this movie, and I know this because of Madison, my wife watched Ray Donovan. I thought Ray Donovan was like a British or like a British show, and I thought Liev Schreiber was a Australian guy or British. But he's just he's from San Francisco. And even in this movie today, I was like, wow, he's really hiding his accent well. And I'm like...
It's like, no, that's just what he sounds like.
That's just what he sounds like. I'm an idiot.
You're not an idiot. You just didn't care, I guess, about the actor.
No, he looks
until he was a Wolverine man.
He looks Australian. Like, he's got...
He looks Jewish to me, and he is.
Oh.
I mean, what? He is. And he does. And he sounds it. Like his voice is very Jewish
like,
sounding.
Jaime.
Wunderkind.
Jaime.
You beat me by 1 year, Harry. 1 year. Remember that part? We're about to get to it, if we can get us inside the ship. So we go inside the ship, or we don't yet, because what happens is Ted decides, all right, everybody, let me just show you the magic of whatever. And he what does he say? He says something about like thermodynamics or something, or physics. Does he say physics?
Physics.
He just like hits a hammer and a pick, ding, 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 and then this is where Sam Jackson once again shows that he's like the smartest character in the fucking movie, where he's like, it chipped, and the Barnes is like, so what? And he's like, well, I thought you said this thing came in and crashed and is indestructible. It's like, yeah. And he's like, so how come it chipped when your scientist here just banged on it with a hammer? Which, like, true, yeah. How did that happen? Which makes you start to be like, okay, something's up here. It's chipping paint. It's not even like they're chipping the metal off. It's like paint is coming off the outside of it, which gives you the idea that there's paint. They go inside. Yes?
How'd the door open?
The door opens automatically. That's right. Sorry, I was waiting for someone to interrupt because I couldn't remember what happened, how they got inside. I'm like, how does the door open? And he doesn't bang it open with a pickaxe, does he? And then, you know, they go inside and they do the typical alien thing. But Jason, like you were saying before, everything in here looks eerily familiar from Alien and like any science fiction that you've seen before, except everything looks drastically human. Like tanks, gas tanks. There's handrails. There's arches of, you know, metal that, you know, if you watch Alien, everything's Giger impressionist, where it's like it looks organic and strange and alien. But like you watch this and it's just like, this just looks like humans are making it looks like a factory or like a space submarine or something. You know, like it's like a submarine but larger.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what basura is?
Basura?
That's Spanish for trash, I believe, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Well,
I looked it up.
It's an American spaceship, and the American second language is Spanish, so I made the assumption.
Okay. That
would be like if it was a Canadian spaceship.
French.
Like trash, eh? Garbage bin, eh?
Poubelle? Poubelle?
Trash rendezvous.
Is it Poubelle? Is Trash Can Poubelle?
Yeah, it's Je marche dans le poubelle.
Oh, no, isn't it Ray Fuse?
Je marche dans le jambon.
It would be poo-poo going here, y'all.
It's okay to make that joke because French people, am I right?
No, I'm just joking. It's a joke. So they go.
It's a joke.
It's a joke. You see. They go in. They're walking down the corridor, and then they see some footprints, and everyone's like, "What the fuck?" And they're like sneaker footprints almost. They're like work boots.
They look
footprints.
like Doc Martens or something.
Yeah, it looks like
also
a punk band walked through here.
Wouldn't dust like cover that eventually?
Well, if
it's a harmonic
matter, if there's no organic matter, dust is derived from, like, it has to come from somewhere, right? So if it's a sterile
like
environment,
hermetically sealed as well, like, you know, nothing's moving
just
around.
Get dusty unless there's like a broken window.
But also, yes, Kaylin, good question. That's like one of those things where I'm like, would there still be? Because like you watch Sunshine next week, we're gonna. Oh, sorry, I ruined it. But yeah,
we're gonna talk about stuff.
I'm excited to watch Sunshine. I'll tell you that much right now.
I've never been.
I've never been either.
Speaking of Sphere,
I've never Mr. Bean. Yay.
So in this Sphere movie,
is there a motif? Like, is there beyond the isolation thing? Are you going to learn something about a motif that you're doing secretly?
No, I'm just giving you several movies that I really, really, really like a lot. And like some of them I haven't seen in a very long time. Some of them
And next April we're doing all John Candy movies. It's 4 John Candy movies. Uncle Buck.
You know what? I would actually do those because they're not strictly.
That's
comedy.
true. They're like
dramatic.
John Hughes. They're either literally John Hughes movies or John Hughes adjacent. So they're
that
like.
Sounds better than Chris Farley month to me.
I'm not
he's like,
Chris Farley.
And everyone's like, "Can you stop? Can you just stop?" Like the comedy is everybody telling him to stop.
I don't want to have to
weirdo.
do fucking Riding West or whatever his last movie is.
Okay, so anyway, they split up. Sam Jackson's character does the classic, like, I don't think we should split up, but it's like we don't have enough air to explore the whole ship. So it's more logical than just like, we'll cover more ground this way. It's like, no, we don't have enough air for all of us to just go together throughout. Mm-hmm. So they split up. But he's still, and in the commentary, Sam Jackson was like, in this situation, there are 5 of us. I would say, you 2 go that way, you 2 go that way, and my character would go back to the station and tell everybody what's going on. That's what I would do.
That seems like a thing that Harry would do too.
Yeah.
That's good.
Because Harry is very much the guy.
I think he even
I
said,
don't want any
like,
part of this shit.
I'm
a mathematician,
which was like divide and conquer. I don't like the idea of that because he's like, it seems like a bad idea. And then we get the kind of the fun moment. Well, we get like an interesting moment between Norman and Beth, where like we get a little bit more of their relationship, which is, you know, it's never really kind of like told to us what happened, but we can kind of fill in the blanks ourselves, which I always enjoy in a movie where they're not like, you said this, you said that. It's like, you said this one thing, and they're like, but you know what that meant, didn't you, Beth? Come on. And she's like, didn't I, Norman? And then it cuts back to first they get like sucked up in an elevator, and you're like, holy shit, this thing's still alive. The ship's still alive. And then it cuts back to Liev and the Sam Jackson and the Barnes. And this is where you find out that Barnes is also super duper smart, because you don't really know. You know that he knows what's going on, but you don't know that he's also just as intelligent as everybody else that's on the ship, which I kind of appreciate in a way, because you always have that sort of character who's like, we're gonna blow it up, I'm the fucking colonel or whatever, but he's like,
it's
look
the
at this.
only red one there, turn it.
Exactly. He's like well, he does turn into that character eventually, but you get this sort of glimpse into the idea that he's also just as smart as they are when he's analyzing the materials, and he's like, look at this, it's soft but also hard, better than steel and rubber. And they're like, how do you know that? And he's like, well, I studied like molecular biology at MIT or whatever. Like, and he got my doctorate in it. So he's also like a doctor as well with them, which is like something you don't really see in a lot of movies like this. They always want to have the hardened Marine or something there to be the one that barks orders at them, but he's also really good. I understand this too. They
leave all those military types back at the ship, and it's just
Yeah.
a bunch of, it's like Ghostbustery in that respect too, where you have a bunch of like nerds dealing with this very real action kind of situation.
Yeah.
And they all have their own little sort of powers that they have to use.
And he does as well. And like, he's not a wasted character, you know, he's there for a specific reason. And
I love the idea of an astrophysicist underwater. So, like, that's one of those ideas that somebody was like, what if we have a guy who is like, he studies like the trajectory of rockets and how to like go to space. What if we put him on like completely out of his element, but he cracks wise?
There's also that scene later on.
He's
with
the Peter Venkman of the crew.
Yeah, with Barnes, where he like gets right up into Norman's grill about not being truthful about everyone's psychiatric examinations, right? It's like, you're the only reason you're here is to talk to the aliens. There are no aliens, and you referred all these other people to be here, but you didn't think that, you know, like, this person who has like tried to kill themselves, who is unstable, bringing them all the way 1,000 feet underwater in an exotic gas environment with like a bunch of like people. You don't think that's dangerous? And he's like, I didn't know that we were going to be 1,000 feet. He's like, it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 feet or 10 feet, man. Like, why the fuck did
we
you
didn't
tell
talk
me
about
shit?
it at the beginning, really, but like, even when like Norman gets brought in and he's being kind of debriefed on what was going to happen, he's like, yeah, well, it's an airplane, it's a crashed airplane. They're like, I never said it was an airplane. Nobody and then when finally they're like, it's a spacecraft. And he's like, oh, so it's NASA? It's like he's dense, like he's the insert, the everyman insert who like doesn't believe in this stuff. But then as soon as when it's revealed that it's potentially an alien spacecraft, he's on board. And he's like,
because he wants to be there.
See this. He wants to see this. And
I mean, you can't say that you wouldn't want to be as well. If you got referred to, right? Like, yeah, I would be down there for sure.
My point is like, he's on board, and he keeps, throughout the movie, he like, before they actually get into the shit, he keeps being like, wouldn't you want to see it? Like, I don't understand why you're being so apprehensive about this. Wouldn't you want to see like potentially something that's going to change humanity forever?
I think everybody would.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that like, I'm terrified of the water, but if I was at the precipice of like the opening to a submarine saying you have to get into the submarine and go 1,000 feet below water, but you might meet aliens, I'd be like, all right. I can maybe deal with it.
All right, I'll figure it out, I guess.
I'll deal with my anxiety.
Why did they automatically guess it was 2043?
Well, I think they just like thought of like the closest 43. Yeah. Because then the next one that she says is 1643, which is the next one backwards.
1543.
I don't think
before the 300 years. Yeah.
I do agree. I think she should have said like, it could be like 2543. It could be 2043. She should have added another one even further, right? Like,
yeah.
Because at that point, she already knows it's in the future. It would have been more like logical. It makes her seem like she's like being sort of closed-minded. It's like, well, it's either this or that, but like, I don't think she really.
Well, in 1990, even in 1998, like right here in our current year, 2023, like 2043 doesn't seem like that far away now. It's only 20 years from now. I'll be, 60.
But in 1998, they could make a spaceship. Maybe
that's like 50 years from now. Yeah.
Well, we were alive.
I know, kids. But like in 1998, I would even look at 2043.
I'm still waiting for my Back to the Future sneakers and my cool ass.
The sneakers exist.
There is a good line though in this moment where like
hoverboards do not.
They're like 43, and then she's like, well, "This ship's 300 years ago. But it's an American ship," and he's like, well, it can't be 300 years ago. The ship can't be. There weren't even Americans back then. It's like, let alone like an astronaut. And you're like, yeah, that's true. So maybe you should think a little bit more forward facing.
My theory at this point in the movie was that it was a spaceship from the future that went back in time, and that's how they could justify saying that it's 1543. So they went back in time.
That's what the story is.
And came back to the future. Okay, well, there you go.
They go through a black hole. That's
they have that.
You missed Liev Shriver's whole fucking.
No, I was about to say. I remember now.
Okay, that's what happens. That's exactly what happens. Is they found the sphere, and the sphere was like through a black hole, And then
so during that scene when they're watching the unknown event, right?
Yeah.
And then they get to the hole, they're doing the warp thing, and as it's spinning, it kind of looks like the sphere, right? Like that golden kind of ball.
Yeah.
So you guys noticed that too? Cool.
Yeah. It's very cool. The unknown event part is, not as well done as like the scene in Prometheus where Michael is like surrounded by the galaxy and everything, but it does seem like a precursor to that moment where like there's universes and asteroids and shit like passing them, and they're looking at it. And there's one funny scene where it's like showing them and they're like mesmerized, and then it cuts back to the skeleton and it's like it's going past the skeleton too, and you're like, somebody give that skeleton his almonds back. But
how long do almonds last?
Apparently a long time.
Blunt force trauma. They kept talking. How did the remember in the ship? How did the guy die? Oh, blunt force trauma. They kept bringing that up. I thought it was
obviously
cute.
Well, they do sort of at the end. They explain it, I guess, but they explain it away more than explaining it. It'd be cool if they found like a security, like an Event Horizon style security footage or something.
But instead of a man
that's not what the
covered in
movie's
barbed
about.
wire,
The movie's
just
more
like
about mystery.
It's just like the Thing where the guy just looks paranoid and bashes the other guy.
That's the difference between this and Event Horizon. They're very similar movies, but like Event Horizon,
they open up space hell in Event Horizon.
Yeah,
I'm very excited to talk about that movie.
Yeah. But this movie's more about like, imagine if you will, a door within a door. A
manifestation of a manifestation.
Within your manifestation, I manifested something. You're the only one left. So they eventually they both communicate back to one another that they realize it's an American spaceship, and then the other guy says it's even better than that. And I'm like, an African American station? The ship is fully woke? Is that what you're saying?
It's
sick.
fully woke.
We won in the future.
I wrote that they
woke culture won.
I wrote they found the titular sphere right around this point.
Yeah, and this is when they have that sort of like the moment where they all look at it, and I do like that Dustin Hoffman's the only one who realizes that it's not reflecting anybody. It's just reflecting the environment. But I feel like that's something I would notice 100% immediately. If I walked up to a big mirror and my fucking reflection wasn't in it, I'd be like, hey guys, what the fuck? We gotta get out of here. This thing's evil. It's sucking our fucking reflections.
It's from deep, deep space. It's from a different dimension, potentially.
But I also think that's sort of the movie telling us that like a scientific mind of this caliber or this level thinks on something on a level that is so completely different than ours, right? Like if the three of us were to walk in a room and look at a reflective ball that was just floating in midair, and we weren't told to figure out how it's floating there and why it's there, we'd be like, why isn't it reflecting our faces? But like people who were told to go in there and figure out why it's there, they would forget to think about what it's reflecting and try and figure out why it's reflecting, and they wouldn't even kind of think of it, which I think that's kind of cool and interesting. It also like opens up the minds of the characters a little bit more. They're also like obsessed with certain things that they can't see what's not being reflected in front of their faces.
This is the exact point when I feel like I was like, wow, this feels like the newer bad Fantastic Four movie, but like it's better. And it really is just because of in that new one they like go through the portal and they see like the weird gamma ray universe planet. They do. And they go back and then they're like just hanging out having drinks, and then they're drunk, and then they decide to go back through, and that's where all that's when they get belted by gamma rays and Iron Face, Doctor Doom, the worst Doctor Doom they've ever put to screen.
I honestly I saw that movie in theaters, but I don't remember like anything that happened.
It was the same Fantastic Four they've always done. It was just like they just tried to Christopher Nolan gritty it, but it just sucked. And also it was like a body horror, and also like it suffered from a million reshoots, and Kate Mara like sucked in it, and fucking the guy that played Ben Grimm sucked. Michael B. Jordan, is that who played? He was okay, and Miles Teller is okay because he's a good actor. But I don't think he was the right choice for fucking Mr. Fantastic, but we're talking about The Sphere.
Yeah, you know what is a good movie?
This
Sphere.
movie, comparatively, this movie should have won an Oscar.
Circle back.
Sphere back.
So they find the sphere, and then they all go back, and they all start having their conversations about the sphere and what it is and what it could be, and like that's always fun as well. Speculation. What are they doing? But they don't have that alien moment. But I did check the time code at this point, and the moment that the guy has the face hugger fall off his body, and they wake him up, is very, very close to this time stamp. And I'm like, they're using the alien time code, because like when you think about Alien, there's like 40 minutes before anything crazy happens, and it's right around the 40-minute point that they get back into the pod, and it's almost exactly at the same moment when the alien bursts out of the chest that Harry is going into the sphere.
I do want to just cool. as an aside say that we did blast through our time, and it is now 20 to 11.
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on it.
Okay.
Because I think that we're gonna kind of run through the end. Like, we're talking about the good parts.
So the build up to the action and the horror in this movie is most of it, and then it's a series of things that happen.
All right.
Do you disagree?
So I don't disagree, but I don't know if I would word it that way.
Okay.
I think that the part that we're about to talk about, which is when, Dustin Hoffman is flossing his teeth and Sam Jackson is having a shower. You get a nice little peek at Sam Jackson's butt, and you're like, "Yoo! Show me more of that."
Just another aside, just to get one of my moments, one of my segments out of the way. The Home Alone of it all in this, is it when they get to the spaceship, or is it when they meet the sphere?
I think it's when Sam Jackson gets sucked into the sphere.
I think it's when we see Sam Jackson like just goofy smile in the sphere.
Yeah, that's the Home Alone, right?
Is when it's like,
I heard the like ding 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 ding. Yeah,
I hate and love that moment so much. I want to go back and just watch that.
So does Sam Jackson. He hates it and loves it at the same time. He's like, I hate this, but I also think it's pretty good. Like, I kind of like it a lot.
What do you guys make of the reflection traveling up the thing?
So Sam Jackson said when he was filming the movie, he thought that he was going to be circling around it to the top.
Okay.
He didn't think it was going to go right up to the top, like a weird like mermaid or some shit. That's kind of what it reminds me of. But like he thought it was going to be like spiraling upwards, like those like coin games where the pennies going around. Like he thought it was going to be like one of those. And I was like, that's, if a director doesn't tell you that, like, what is your brain doing? If you're looking at nothing and you're like, you get sucked in the sphere, you're like, just tell me more. Give me more information.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
The director's like, we'll fix it in post.
But like, they probably didn't even know. That's the stupid part. What they should have done is filmed it like every possible angle. Like, all right, now you're going this way. Now you're going that way. Now you're going straight up. Now you're going under, and you're like, whoa, you went under this view.
Just a little cool detail that I noticed: the things that they have on their wrists looked a lot like Pip-Boys. And I'm not saying that one was based on the other, but I just thought it was really cool that they had like literally what I would imagine a movie version of a Pip-Boy would look like.
But I mean, like, every fucking sci-fi thing is you have a thing on your goddamn wrist.
That's true. That's a good point.
Buzz Lightyear has one.
That's true. To infinity and beyond. And he tries to shoot a thing, but it's just a shitty plastic.
To infinity and your mom. So Sam Jackson says some cool shit at this point, where he's like,
gotta get these spheres off this motherfucking spheres.
Well, but they also, the Liev Schreiber's character also has like the moment where he realizes like it's not from here, it's from when. It's like from the future.
Planet X.
And like he's like, so they didn't crash, they arrived, but they arrived 300 years ago. So when they got here, there was no one here to welcome them, and they didn't know what to do. So they landed in the ocean, they sunk, and they tried to figure out what to do. And then and like Norman has the theory that like Harry is upset that that Liev's character figured it out.
Do you believe that the Earth is only 299 years old? I'm pretty sure America was settled 300 years ago.
Okay. What? So
well, you said they got here and nobody was here. Or do you mean just did that in the
There
middle
weren't
of the ocean?
advanced civilizations to receive a giant spaceship that came in and they were like, where do we fucking go? We don't have a spaceship port to land.
Britain.
I mean, sure, but maybe they were like, we can't disrupt the timeline, so we'll land in the middle of the ocean in the deepest part of the Mariana Trench to make sure that we don't fuck up the future. And then once humanity is like advanced enough to find us, they'll at least be able to deal with us. We can't land in the fucking medieval.
Sorry, Caitlin, what were you gonna say?
I thought that they just like warped there, like that's the spot that they landed, and then I was also thinking that, you know, who knows how long that, you know, time warp actually is, and maybe their whole events of kind of attacking each other or whatever took place during that, so that when they landed, you know, there wasn't any, they were all done and dead and there was no activity.
Oh, so the ship just appeared and they were already dead?
Yeah.
Oh,
and then it just
I didn't think about that.
Into the water, like they were dead.
Yeah, because like the whole thing is like Sam Jackson being like, why is the ship not damaged? Because you said it's indestructible, but when you hit it with a hammer, it chips. And it's like, okay, so my brain, they arrive and they're like, oh, there's nothing here. Shit, we've arrived in the past, and they just like sunk, and they're like, we have to just like sink, guys. We can't fucking fuck with the timeline.
That whatever metal they used for the hull is just corroded. It's corroding. But he was on the inside that it chipped, right?
No, he was trying to open the door. He like hits it with a hammer.
The salt water corrodes shit. It's very corrosive.
All right. Anyway, I think that the conceit of the movie is like it's supposed to be indestructible, and him hitting it with a hammer proves that it's not, and that's what leads Liev Schreiber into like being like, okay, so it came back here, and it sunk. It sunk to the bottom of the ocean. It's not indestructible. They didn't crash. That's why there's no damage. It just landed and it sunk. And that's when Sam Jackson starts to be like, oh shit. So like, if this thing's from the future, then that means we found it now and it still launched in the future, which means that nobody told it what was going to happen.
Yeah.
If we told them what was going to happen, then the people that launched it would eventually know about this.
Not to do it again.
And that's what leads him to the idea that like we all die here.
And then he pulls out a picture of the spaceship and it's disappearing and coming in and out. Like Back to the Future.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, when he said that, I was like, or maybe you just didn't tell them.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
And that's what happens at the end of the movie.
They forget. Yeah. They use
but the idea of finding something
so like
in that moment though, like finding something that amazing and then coming back to the surface, you're gonna tell them, right, in that moment. So what he's thinking is like, how the fuck
true, yeah,
do we not? Because like we have to tell them. They're gonna put us at gunpoint and make us tell them what we saw down here, and we saw this. We saw an American-made spaceship, which is also hubris, right? Like the most ultimate hubris of all things, that America thinks they're gonna make some fucking crazy ass spaceship that like, and they only include 2 languages, Spanish and English. That's some real like McDonald's ass spaceship if I ever saw one. But yeah, I like it, but there's lots of holes. This movie is full of holes. Maybe that's why there's spaceship. There had too many holes in it. So he gets freaky with time travel and tells everyone that they're gonna die, and that's where he says, "Damn, I want to get into that sphere," and it fades to black again, and that's where we get like the next moment, the incident where he runs and he gets into the sphere. We already talked about it enough, where Sam Jackson is going in there, but we do get a nice moment with Dustin Hoffman and Barnes where they see him float. And then Dustin Hoffman goes in there and he finds him and he like materializes like a fucking ghost, which is, I would have liked to see him get pooped out of the sphere, like shit out of the bottom or something.
Yeah.
A bunch of ooze or something, golden ooze. That would have been cool. But he just appears, and then Dustin Hoffman. So we're all privy to the fact that Dustin Hoffman gets into the sphere like right away, which maybe we shouldn't have had that.
I'm going to counter.
All right, counter me, man.
I'm not sure if it's time to fully counter yet, though. I might readdress this counter later.
Well, the thing is that later in the movie, Dustin Hoffman is the only one who's like, I'm the only one who hasn't been in the sphere. You've all been in the sphere. But like we see that he got into the sphere the same way that Sam Jackson did right after Sam Jackson did.
Did we though?
Yes.
Or did someone plant that image in his mind? Now, are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for my shit? Are you guys ready for my shit? Because
I mean, we've been waiting for it this whole time.
We don't have a lot of time left.
Okay, so I'm watching it the first time, and when the supernatural shit happens, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then there's these hints of, okay, the sphere is having some kind of like power over them or whatever, blah blah blah, or the sphere is doing this or whatever. Oh no, it's them doing this. Oh, just wait, no, it's this and this person doing this. Oh no, it's
right. We get it.
Yeah. Okay. And then so I think it's only Harry and Beth. Now, I'm like, when I was watching, I'm like, why is Harry acting so weird? Why is he the only one acting weird? And then I was like, wait a second, Beth is crazy and on pills. And when they go to the ship the first time, when the door opens, it's after she touches the door. I'm thinking at the end, when they do the whole forgetful thing, she doesn't actually. And she still has the power. So because she's going to have the power, she still has the power as far as like before the events happen. So when she's all crazy, it's because she has these powers. She doesn't either she doesn't fully understand yet why. And she's like trying to take the pills to subdue it and shit like that. And then she's the one doing most of the mind shit. Like Harry's doing a little bit because he is the first one to
Norman's
actually
doing a lot of stuff, man. Norman's doing a lot of stuff. You can't ignore Norman.
No. I don't think he is. I think it's Beth trying to make him think he's doing it. And there's a part around the end where
right, hold on. I gotta poke a hole.
Okay.
Norman sees a jellyfish float above the habitat. And right after that, Queen Latifah goes out to set the tapes into the sub and reset the sub and come back. And on the way back, she gets attacked by a bunch of jellyfish that infiltrate her suit and kill her. And it's the most devastating and scary moment in the entire film. It's horrifying.
For some reason, I thought he said something about jellyfish before that. That is a good whole poke.
He only says it during the autopsy of her body.
Okay, so
and
then
she says these are not regular jellyfish. These are like jellyfish manifest by some fucking. She didn't say manifest, but she says these aren't of God. And I'm like, oh yeah, those are old devil fish. That's what we call them, jelly devils.
Okay,
down here,
all three of them do have it, but she's doing a lot of it, and she still has it at the end. Like she didn't actually do the forgetful thing.
I honestly can't even find a single moment in the movie where she manifests the trouble other than maybe creating paranoia amongst everybody. That could be the thing that she's.
What about when Norman's stuck in that room with it and she's like, you got to take the hypodermic needle and jack yourself in?
Yeah, she says you got to take the hypodermic needle and put it in your booty and everything will be fine. But Kaylin, I'm not disagreeing with you because I think that the paranoia that is being manifest between everyone, the fact that no one trusts anybody, is her manifestation. That's the manifestation that I think she's creating. So Harry is manifesting the giant squid and himself in the computer because he considers himself as a computer. And
is he doing it all the time though? Because I feel like there's moments when Norman's talking to the computer and I feel like it's him doing it.
Well, the thing about that
once they get it,
he's a mathematician, and they have to develop a code to determine to decipher what he's saying, and then also
if the J's wrong, how come the sentence doesn't make any sense? Because there's H's in that sentence. Wouldn't the H's be reversed?
Yeah. See, this is one of those moments that we have to just you
gotta ignore it. But the obvious thing is he is literally a computer, so he's manifesting himself into the computer. When he's asleep, though, is when he manifests the squid, and also the clues are so obvious that that they feed him, trying to feed him calamari. Why do they have calamari? That was like
Did you see that fridge? It was full of
everything.
Every time they opened it, I was like, they have frozen everything in there. I was like recognizing brands and stuff from my childhood.
Did you guys notice the gesture?
Yes, we all saw the cocaine gesture. I'm pretty sure there's no cocaine at the bottom of the ocean.
But what blew my mind is that they had that moment where he wakes up for the first time and he's eating the eggs and bacon and he's psyched about eggs and bacon, and I'm like, is there like a thing where squids like eat egg or something, like they eat their own young or something?
I think that was just that he had been asleep for like I think it's implied that he'd been asleep for like over a day.
Yeah,
so
for like
he's
a
just
day.
very
So
hungry.
he's very hungry. But then when he's given the calamari, that's when he loses his mind. But that's just because of his manifestation of being a kid and reading 20,000 Leagues Below Sea and getting to page 87
He hates
and
squid,
being scared, which is very
that made
like
me think the alien was like squid-like or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of like misdirects in this movie, and I think that's
that wasn't a misdirect though. That was like a direct clue.
Yeah, but I mean the bigger picture misdirect is that we think that at this point the movie is a giant squid movie.
But then the next
they keep showing
the next misdirect is that you think it's all hairy.
Yeah,
and then you realize it's like no, it's not. And like
this movie is very much like an M. Night Shyamalan movie, except for instead of having one big moment, you just you keep getting more like mind.
Jason, I do recommend you watch it again because you're gonna pick up on a bunch of shit that I think you didn't notice the first time around. That's like fair. It is one of those ones where you're like, I
hate movies like this specifically. I hate having to take notes during because I'm not because as I'm taking a note, like so many things are happening. So as I'm writing something down, something new is happening.
Most of my notes for this one were like what stood out in terms of like stuff that I already know and like what looked good and why I like what I like, because there's certain things that I like about this movie that have stuck with me since my first viewings that I still like now, and there are certain things that always bug me from my first viewings until now, and those exist still as well. And like some of them are the improv. I love some of the improv, but I also hate some of the improv, and like it particularly comes as soon as they stick Sam Jackson with that tranquilizer, the movie for me like it loses a lot of its luster.
Can you
and it falls apart a little bit.
Can you sort of in summation get us, because we're about halfway through the movie at this point. We've talked about most things.
Well, I keep trying to, but everyone keeps being like, let me just tell you about my thought about Queen Latifah's weird corpse that they do an autopsy on.
I like when the guy gets implied chopped in half, and then the payoff is half of his body is floating around later. Yeah.
When he was floating, I went, hello, it's me, half a captain. How are you? So Queen Latifah's death is the I guess you could call it the second Home Alone moment where like you realize like something's not right. But the first moment is like, damn, I wish I could get in that sphere, which we didn't really get past. But yes, the jellyfish. I know we talked about it earlier, but they look fucking great. Like when she's like, man, this is beautiful, and she's walking around and like she's never seen something like this before. It is beautiful, and like it looks beautiful on screen. I watched it in fucking Blu-ray, and it looks great. But that's one of the most horrific deaths I've seen in a movie in a long time.
Sphere rhymes with fear is a note that I wrote.
Yeah, jelly murder is horrifying. If you ever want
to time travel, you're gonna get caught in an endless loop.
Oh, I thought you were gonna be like, if you ever decide to time travel, you might commit murder in the form of jelly devils crushing someone's insides from inside their suit. The Colonel is very smart. We got through that. Okay. So we don't want to talk about Jerry much, do we? We know Jerry is the manifestation of what they think is the sphere. They think the sphere is talking to them. And it's interesting, and it's a very interesting thing that I wish we didn't resolve as quickly, because it does get resolved a little bit too quickly. But
and also I saw it coming from a mile away because Jerry and Harry rhyme. They should have not done that. They should have made it not that, and it was too obvious.
See, like, I mean, I watched it pretty young, so like I don't think
You were probably mind blown at age 9 by that revelation.
I woke up and I was like,
38-year-old
Harry and Jerry. Boom, ding, ding, ding.
As a 38-year-old who's just kind of over it in life, I was like, yeah, I know. Thank you, but I know that already.
And he said, hello, Jerry.
Hello, Jerry.
Hello, Norman.
Hello, Newman. Yeah.
Norman.
Hello, Norman.
Movie sphere. Okay, anyway. The spiral keyboard makes no fucking sense at all. Just if we wanted to talk about it.
It's just,
how'd they know they use those numbers?
Well, the thing is that Harry is the one that gives them the code, right?
Right.
He's the one, it's coming out of his brain. He's the one creating the letter breaks. He's the one creating everything. And they make a thing where it spirals out a keyboard and goes around a sphere or something. And I'm like, that's the moment where I'm like, this is where this, like, I can understand all the science up to that. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? You wrap it like a sphere?
No, I didn't even
keyboard?
Yeah,
like,
I didn't even try. I went like this while I was watching the movie, and I went no.
But I mean, the explanation, I guess, is that Harry did that, right? Like he gave Liev the tools to create that, so he created the code, which then made him Jerry. And then, you know, when Dustin Hoffman went back later to decode it again, he realized that something was wrong with the code. And I assume he had to redo the whole code and not just, he wasn't just like, wait a minute, an E is an A and an H is a ugh. Because like then none of the other letters would make
power
sense.
Because he thought it was Harry. So he manifested it to be that. To be wrong and for the number.
Oh man, imagine it. Jerry was a real character, and like they all just manifested Jerry to death. And he's like, and they're like, it's all of us fighting each other. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. That would be a better movie. Jerry Seinfeld. I wrote down. Jerry mad. Well, I mean, this moment is kind of cool where Jerry, you know, presents himself as sort of like childlike and interesting, and Sam Jackson says like, well, no, it's very clear, concise, and direct, and it tells us exactly what they want to hear as much as how they're feeling. And they have their conversation back and forth, and I like it. It's intriguing. It makes you feel like, oh, I want to know more, a little bit more. And then the best part is at the end of that scene where Dustin Hoffman's like, well, I prefer if Jerry didn't have any emotions at all, because, you know, if Jerry's happy, then what happens if Jerry gets mad? And you're like, oh, shit, Dustin, you just blew my mind,
and then
bro.
Just think happy thoughts.
We have the well, it's like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters a little bit. But it's like the you know, the squids attacking this base, and I love how they keep cutting back to the screen of I will kill you all.
Yeah,
that
it's a little bit much. Yeah, where you're like, geez, man, Jerry, calm down. Because
I'm gonna say a movie. Do you guys remember the cartoon movie with the dinosaurs? We're Back.
Yeah, I do. Actually.
And the guy that like got energy off of fear.
I like the bad guy had that or whatever. I don't really remember that. I remember that element, but I kind of want to watch We're Back.
That's what this
okay. I kind of want to keep us on course.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Steve.
We get that scene, and then we get a weird scene. We get the scene between Dustin Hoffman and the colonel or whatever the fuck his rank is in the military, where they finally talk about Beth's character, and he reveals, you know, like she took 20 Bumby and like, they say, like I can't remember what, like they have like a specific.
That was earlier. Did you? Yeah, you mentioned that.
No, it's in between the Jerry scene and the monster scene. I wrote it down because it's important to my next point, which is that's when he first finds out, and then, you know, they have their arguments, and then Harry is awake, and you get the monster scene directly after, you know, the computer scene and the argument between the two of them. And then there's this moment after they speak to Jerry where Beth and Barnes are talking, and Barnes says like, well, you know, he told us everything about you. And she's like, what? And he's like, well, basically all I'm trying to say is that if Jerry could read your mind, he'd be bored with ours. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? And like,
crazy.
To me, no,
Pull
to
the green
me,
lever.
I understand the direction and what it's meant to do with her character, but like it implies that Jerry was able to read their minds previous. Am I wrong? Or is that just me like
No, you were just saying if he could.
but the way he says if, it's like he was reading people's minds in the room while they were talking to him, kind of thing, which is not implied in that scene. So I'm like, I feel like there's more to this movie that kind of like got chopped out, you know, like maybe like, you know, like when they speak later and like, hello, Norman, like, and they're talking and stuff. Like, I feel like there's a bit of this movie where it's like reading their thoughts or something. Sorry.
Well, it is their thoughts creating it, so.
That's what I'm saying. I think that there's a lot of book stuff that they tried to do that didn't work, and they had to like go back and do reshoots, and it just really didn't fucking work.
I think that this movie would have worked with a more visionary director. Like I've made it a bigger thing.
When they're doing reshoots, they took some time and
flat
like,
out made it just an indie film with a lot of
figure this out.
Just a lot of a lot of show don't tell stuff, which this movie falls. It's like I said earlier, it's like a medium budget, sort of in the middle. It's not quite Jurassic
It's
Park.
A big budget. It's not a medium budget. It's a big fucking budget.
That's true. Okay, I guess the scope of the movie.
This is like a couple steps under Jurassic Park level budget. Like it's
but
huge.
It didn't feel as grand as Jurassic Park. It doesn't have that same. It's
because you didn't hear dun 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 dun.
Spielberg wasn't like. Ding, ding. What if I made a film?
Is like he wasn't a Spielberg. He's not a household name, but he made movies that everyone knows. If you take a second to check out his filmography, you'll be like, oh fuck, this guy made.
No, I know.
Movies that everybody knows.
I recognize the name Barry Levinson, of course.
Okay. Anyway,
we've covered Barry Levinson movies on this show, I believe.
Yeah, we've been like 10 minutes of Wagner, 10 minutes of Wagner.
Yeah, like Raidman. And I covered Good Morning Vietnam on my movie reviews thing. And he made B-movie.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld.
What's the deal with bees?
Ding, 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 ding,
a bee
ding.
shouldn't be able
Stop
to...
calling me Jerry.
A bee shouldn't be able to handle its own weight under its... Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so, we get past the moment where Harry and... or we don't get past it. Sorry, yeah, go ahead, Kellen.
Why did Jerry want Ted to come back and find him humorous? I thought Harry didn't like Ted.
No, Harry liked Ted. Harry did like Ted.
Harry,
I think Harry competitiveness, not a fun competitiveness.
No, it's a very fun competitiveness between the two of them, in my opinion. I think that they deeply love each other because they're the only two people who that like know each other, that are colleagues, that are competitive in a friendly way. Like Harry got his PhD 1 year before Ted. Ted got 3 PhDs at the same school. Harry's like, I hated that school because it was boring to me, so I went to other schools. And like it's like they're like nerds, but they don't hate each other. Okay. They like have I think they have like a deep deep respect for each other.
He told Norman that he's
a pain in the ass, but that doesn't mean he doesn't like him. That doesn't mean he wants him to get crushed by a giant squid and die.
Okay.
I find him humorous. Bring him back. He finds him humorous because he's humorous.
That was before we know though. Like when I was
we don't know this yet.
It was very unsettling that this childlike entity, because at this point I'm still kind of like, is the sphere like an alien who's like interacting with our world mentally, but it kind of manifests as a child.
This is the main problem, is that like you're feeling this still, right? And like we get the moment where he says like, if they could pick your brain, they wouldn't need our brains. And then not immediately, but we cut to soon after the two of them hearing noises. And then Beth and Norman go underwater and they try to investigate the clinking noise that's happening outside of the habitat. And they go up and they find, I can't remember her name, the woman who has a very clear big gap between her teeth.
Edmonds,
yeah. And it's kind of rude because like they picked an actor, I think, who had a big gap in her teeth so that when they made a dummy, they could like pull the face up and be like, how do we differentiate you from everyone else? Big gap in your teeth, maybe?
Yeah.
And you know what? It worked. It worked very well. And the creepiest part, I think, about that is that Beth is like touching all her limbs and being like, she's been pulverized, like her bones are dust.
Yeah.
Which I remember that part when I was a kid and being like, what does it mean? Is there a witch, an ocean witch that turned to her
The practical
bones?
effects for dead bodies in this movie are all very good.
They're good, yeah.
Right from the early one in the ship to this to the when we get the
guy who's
half
like,
guy.
I didn't like that last one with Beth. The guy and his head wobbling, all rubbery. I didn't like that one.
You didn't like it because it was freaked you out, or you didn't like it because you thought it looked bad?
It looked rubbery.
I watch a lot of
That's what a dead body looks like.
I'm almost done The Walking Dead, and the amount of times that rubbery effect happens is, I'm just used to it. And I thought this was like a movie version of it.
What do you think a dead body looks like when you like move it around? Like,
maybe
it doesn't look like a
mortis.
human body. It's gonna be like,
I don't know. Aren't they like stiff or something?
At first, they have rigor mortis, but then I think they chill.
but also like there's also a chance that was her mind manifesting that, right? Like that didn't actually happen to her. She just saw that happen.
At one point, I was like, "Are they all in just one room going like?" Whoa!
Well, that's what happens at the end. Let's get to the end, shall we?
Okay.
So they find Edmonds and they realize she's been pulverized and they want to bring her back in. And then all of a sudden, all these eggs start falling. And I remember this as well as a kid and being like, what are those?
They're grapes.
What's happening? I didn't know they were eggs. I didn't know what was going on.
Grapes.
And I wish subtitles existed on TV when I was a kid because I have a really hard time hearing what's going on in movies and TV when it's like all flat on a speaker. Like if you have surround sound and stuff, it's different because it's on different layers and you can hear it better. But I didn't know what was going on until they stepped on the and you see a little baby squid come out. I was like, oh, it's a baby. It's a baby squid. There's a squid coming. And they kept showing the sonar monitor with a squid on it. But, that's another one that's like, it's not terrifying, but it is frightening. It's a frightening prospect.
It's formidable.
And they're running and they're trying to run underwater. And we all know what it's like to run in a dream. And doesn't that kind of like represent what it looks like running underwater is sort of what it's like to run in a dream, and you're seeing it over and over again. But they're also being rained down upon by these giant fucking capsules of nastiness. It's scary.
Wait till the male comes to fertilize them.
Yeah. And then we get into chaos. This is when everyone dies, right? The captain gets cut in half by the door. Liev gets burned, and Norman and Beth have to try and shut off the valve or whatever, right? And this is where, information earlier in the movie comes in handy, which is like he did definitely say if we activate that, it's going to create fires in the station. And she's yelling it, and Norman just doesn't believe her. But I'm like, Norman, don't you remember? He did
That's
say
what
that.
I was thinking too. Like, remember when they were literally warning you? Because this movie does that thing a lot, where it warns you about a thing, it warns them, and then they ignore it, and then it happens.
Except Beth doesn't. Beth is like, no, remember earlier in the movie
Maybe she used
that we're in right now? We're in a movie, guys. Come on, remember, I'm not the only one here that's crazy. And the thing that bugged me is that the Barnes keeps yelling, she's crazy. Like, he shouldn't have yelled she's crazy over it. He should have just been like, she's right, but do it, because if you don't, we're all gonna die. You need to do it. We're all gonna die if we don't do it. Like, yelling that somebody else is crazy is crazy to me. It makes me think that person's crazy. Anyway,
You also shouldn't say crazy.
well, I mean, in the concept what I'm saying right now is that's what you shouldn't yell. Like, if you yell that someone else is crazy, I think you're crazy. Yeah. And Liev Schreiber also during this entire sequence is doing some crazy fire stunts. Did you see that?
Oh, yo, remember My Secret Identity where he has the two spray cans?
Yeah, that's how he flew around.
That's what the two extinguishers remind me of.
Yeah.
Also, he takes a lot of hits to the head.
Oh, actually, I did want to talk about how he gets bopped on the head and gets knocked out. And then when he gets back to, he's trying to save the day. And then a fucking thing, the ceiling panel falls on his head and bops him. But then it continues to fall and crushes him, and he gets stuck. And then he's looking down and he sees the fire. Man, that's whole shit. And then it's just, and Norman's across the room, like paralyzed with fear, just watching it happen.
He could have helped him.
He could have helped him. Yeah. He could have helped him. Because he says, like, in the next scene, he's like, I know this kid since he's 17 years old. Yeah. And I just laid there while he got his face burned completely off of his face. Yeah. That's my Dustin Hoffman impression, by the way.
Give this man an Oscar.
Give this man an EGOT.
Here's your EGOT.
I think we have to always say EGOT instead of Oscar. It's funny.
I like it.
Or give this man the $10,000.
Give this man the $1 million.
Show me potato salad.
I do like when he's like, we just cut him off. We cut him off and we unplug him. And he's like, well, maybe he doesn't want to be unplugged. And he's like, no, we just cut him off and he's like, and then he's like, I don't know if he wants to be cut off because he's been locked up for 300 years and he maybe doesn't want to go back to sleep. Like, he does a very Dustin Hoffman-y thing, which is funny.
It's acting with your mouth closed, with your teeth clenched.
Yeah.
Talking with your teeth clenched is what I learned that Dustin Hoffman's acting style is.
But then everyone's dead except for the three of them. Yeah. 3 stars. And they send Dustin out to reset the sub. She says, I'll be with you no matter what. And he goes out and he resets the sub, and on his way back his tubes start to leak air. He's like, Beth, is it supposed to leak air like this, Beth? I can't see. It's all fogging up. And he's like tripping and he can't get back in. And no one's answering him. And eventually you see Sam Jackson looking at the screen, which again now makes Sam Jackson seem like he's the bad guy, right? Like he's
ominous
figure, right? And he waits for a long time until he trips. And he's like, watch out for that rock in front of you. And that's right there. And then he's like directing him. He's directing him well too. And it's almost like he wanted to see how far he'd get on his own before he had to intervene.
Yeah.
And I still don't know what's true and what's not true, because like there's the scene afterwards where she's inside the ship. Is she there to actually look for food, or was that when she went into the sphere? Did she go into the sphere earlier? I don't know. I actually
there's a whole.
This is when the movie becomes
Beth.
This is when the movie becomes
there's a whole thing
you can't understand
with
what the fuck's
Beth
going on.
That it's like she gets the to your point, Kaylin. She has the manifestation power somehow, but whether she went in or she has like a contact high or something from it, but also she is whacked on pills for this whole time.
Yeah.
So there may
also
be
the
some
point.
Sort of like.
This is also the point where everybody, when she comes back from the ship, this is when everybody starts to mistrust each other.
Yeah, we get it right into the thing.
And that's where my theory is that like her manifestation is that like she's manifesting everybody else to be paranoid about one another. Which is all if you have the ability to manifest anything, I can manifest Jason mistrusting Kaylin and Kaylin mistrusting me and me mistrusting Kaylin because he mistrusts Jason, and Jason mistrusts me because I mistrust Kaylin, and it becomes this like, and hey, did you see this one? It's hip to be a square.
That's what we in the biz call a callback.
Yep, the callback. So yeah, this is when the movie also becomes very hard to understand, in my opinion. I think everything up to the point when she's coming out of the sub, I can understand, and this is when it becomes hard to understand.
It's like that last 25 or 30 minutes of Midsummer where everything gets really hard to like follow because everybody's all whacked.
I would argue that I understood Midsummer way easier than I understood this, because in this it seems like 5 different people watching this movie could have a different opinion about what's going on, whereas Midsummer, like one person describing it properly, I'd be like, that seems right.
Yeah.
But like in this, I'm like, no, this all seems.
Nobody knows
crazy.
What's going on at the end of this movie. And the people in it, the people watching, nobody.
So like the scene that happens immediately after, like Harry gets him out, and he's like having a panic attack because he almost drowned, and he sees the snake on the ladder, which is a really cool effect. And then it attacks him for a bit. And then they go to the mess hall, and she's being jovial, being like, make me a cup of black coffee, like my mood. I went to the ship to look for some fucking food because there's no food. And everyone's like, there's food.
There's so much food.
So much food up here. I don't know what the fuck she's talking about.
Well, did Harry hide the food? And Harry's like, what are you talking about?
How he actually says, you expect me to hide all this food? Like I hid it and then put it back? Like what the fuck do you think I am? And it's like true, yeah. So like,
but like the reality is like Harry, like you were saying with the paranoia, like he was manifesting.
The thing is, like Norman already is manifesting shit, right? And like Barnes putting the idea into his head that she's crazy is potentially making her crazy. Like he's thinking that she's crazy, so she's actually going crazy because Norman is like, she is crazy. She is crazy.
At this point, Norman's like, you went into the sphere. Like, you went into the sphere.
Admit it. Yeah.
Just admit it. You went into the sphere. Like, you went into the sphere.
Bring me Peter Pan.
And then I like that she does a very real, like, walk out of the room with her middle fingers.
The double middle fingers?
Middle fingers backwards.
I wrote down double middle fingers behind the back equals 90s middle school. That's like something you do. It's
I
like,
get it 10 points.
It's a lot like this one.
Yeah.
The Paul McCartney thing that he used to do.
Or when you do the
interviews.
suck it, but you do the double middle finger suck it. Like, suck it.
Ooh, damn. Never
One
seen that
time a
one.
kid did this to me.
And you went,
I was mortified for years.
I was Mordecai for years. You curled your mustaches. Okay, I can cross out double middle fingers behind the back. Good, I made a note about it. Yeah, it's when everything gets a little bit hard to follow, and the specific scene where he's like, Beth, you were there and you weren't there, and then you were there, and you said you were gonna be there, and she's like, are you Norman? Are you gonna believe him? And like it goes around and around and around and around for like way too long, to the point that I'm like, this is all improvisation between these actors, and the director didn't know what cuts he wanted and what angles he wanted, so he just like put a little bit too much, to the point that we get it, and then the middle finger, double middle finger, is like maybe to us, where I'm like, fuck. Was that to us for like sitting here and watching that whole thing? Because like we didn't need that much. Do you disagree? Did we need that much?
No, this movie has 15 minutes they could have easily cut out.
Yeah.
And this whole shit.
Dare I say 30?
I think the ending of this movie,
I'm with you, Kalen,
would be far more powerful if they chose a villain. If they chose one of these three people to be the villain and have the other two team
to be
up,
doing actually dastardly stuff, because they
didn't.
really paint Harry like he's doing all this dastardly shit, but when you realize that it's the potential that everybody has gone into the sphere and they're all manifesting things on each other, and it just kind of just feels like a poor man's The Thing at that point, with instead of having a whole station of people passing the Thing monster around, it's just a bunch of people paranoid about each other.
Imagine Ted got into the sphere and no one knew, and they had no evidence that he actually got in the sphere. And when he got all burned up, they put him into like a burn ward, and they all thought that they were creating the manifestations, but they didn't think about Ted. And Ted was the one like, doot, doot, and he's like basically dead. And like,
but
Ted's
they keep showing his eyes moving, the
Yeah.
fucking eye moving thing that they
like maybe
Harry
that would have
for a
been
while.
scarier or like cooler, but like, because I don't know what the proper fix is, but like they should have chose to either focus on one of them, because they keep going back between Ted and Beth, or sorry, Norman and Beth, and that's when it gets like kind of boring, because she's like, you manifested the snakes. The snakes were, I put them in a jar and then they disappeared. And he's like, well, Beth, come on. He's like yelling.
Why is Tom Hanks in this movie?
Tom Hanks is the same. And like it doesn't really, it's not gripping. It's sort of like almost annoying. You're like, you guys are all dumb because we've already all figured it out. You've all been in the sphere. We saw Dustin go in the sphere. We saw Sam go into the sphere. We can assume that Sharon went in the sphere as well. So like, you're all fighting each other, and there's this like long 20-minute sequence that we didn't really need. And then you get the nice moment where they all like meet in like a drippy corridor, where they're like, we all went in the sphere, didn't we? And then she's like, oh, I accidentally set up some bombs. You're like, fuck. What the fuck?
At that point, I was like, what's next? What else is going to happen?
But then they, even within that moment where she's like, she realizes, she says she set up the bombs.
The way she's
like, but I didn't arm them. Yeah. I didn't arm them. And then like, he's like,
15 minutes to detonation.
Who set up the bombs then, Beth? And Sam Jackson's like, and then Sharon Stone's like, it was me. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah, of course it was you. We saw it happen.
That's what you were doing when you were looking for food.
And then we get this long moment of, they got to escape. They get to the mini sub. It's cool. And then they get teleported back.
Simultaneously,
I kind of like this.
Balls
so like, I kind of like this sequence. I kind of wish this sequence was maybe longer and like the shit leading up to it was lessened, like the snakes and all, like them distrusting each other. It's like they already distrusted each other for so long. We don't need this. We don't need to have that moment where Dustin Hoffman has to like come out the top and swim around the back and be like, yes, Beth, it's me, I'm alive. Who fucking cares? So because I kind of like them keep getting like teleported to different areas of the ship, but I do also like the fact that this is one of those moments in movies where they seem like they're really trying to accomplish the idea of what a dream looks like visually, which is really hard to do. And like very few movies that I can recall. I would say those like AI people eating pizza that you see now is like closer to what a dream is.
The beer commercial or the pizza place commercial.
That's what a dream looks like to me when I'm having a dream. That's more what it's like.
The writing's all wrong and the fingers
and like
are all
people
wrong.
Are like, drinking something through like nothing. Or like they're both drinking a pop from the same end and you're like, this doesn't make sense. Which they're means eating up here and they're like somehow eating it from up here.
That's a good point. That machine learning AI from Google many years ago that like showed it looked like really weird, and then the new AI stuff that's coming out and the way we dream, it implies that our minds are just on autopilot AI mode, and that's why dreams are so fucking weird. I just blew my own mind.
Wow.
I feel blown.
Hey, did you dream this one?
I manifested it.
Hey, these hoodies?
Yeah. But I did kind of like that end moment. We did talk about it at the beginning where, they keep getting teleported around and they're all sort of mistrusting, not necessarily each other, but their own minds. But I think that Sharon Stone is like, who's doing this? It's one of you guys, because I know we're in the mini sub still. And then finally Dustin Hoffman's like, all right, you just stick out your finger and press the button. And they get out and they go up. And then, Sam Jackson is like, well, I don't think we're going up fast enough. It's like a little action-y moment at the end, but it's not nearly as exciting as a lot of the other stuff that happens in the movie. And it's probably the worst CGI in the whole movie.
It is, yeah.
But they get out, they get to the, they come up in their Michael Bublé sub and they land and they get put into a little room and they're in, their fatigues and Sam Jackson's hair is sort of grown in.
Yeah.
His hair on the side on top and you're like, Sammy,
shave that shit.
No. Grow it out. I want to see what it looks like with long hair.
I want to see what it looks like now.
It looks like Nicolas Cage from Con Air.
It looks like Nicholas Fury from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, you spoke a little bit about this at the beginning, Jason, like them in the chamber at the end being like, what do we tell them? And how do we, and then Dustin Hoffman's like, well, you said it yourself. Like, we die down there. And like, how is this possible? And like, they figure it out. Like, we have to manifest that the person next to us forgets what happened. And my question to you guys is, while that discussion's happening, are you not like manifesting like a boat in your driveway at home and like a trampoline and
well, it's funny that you mentioned that. And to another thing to what Kaylin was saying earlier is I like the idea of them when he's like, why are you still holding my hand? I don't know. It could have cut
You're holding my hand.
Yeah, because then that's the implication that they've forgotten. Like, what are we doing? But then it could have cut to Sharon Stone, and then she looks down and sees a top, and it just keeps spinning and never stops spinning.
Right. I mean, I know what you're saying. Like, it's all a dream is kind of a shitty ending, but I think a better ending would have been like that they manifested that everybody forgets, but they also manifest that they went through something extremely powerful together and they all just hugged or something. You know, like
That's
I think
true.
that would have been a better ending.
And a comedy version of this ending could have been like, well, let's all forget, and then like you said, like a guy
they all
pops a
teabag each other.
monocle. No, a guy pops a monocle, and a guy pops a cool hat, and a guy pops a cool jacket, and then like a race car appears.
Where the
next
door
to
opens
them.
and it's literally Jerry Seinfeld, and he's like, "So."
You're really caught up on this fucking Seinfeld thing.
Well, I mean, his name's Jerry.
His name's Jerry.
I mean, there's that one line where he's like, "I'm not gonna go up top and tell everybody that we spent $100 billion to meet an alien named Jerry, and I lost a person to death."
Yeah.
Fine.
Anyway, that's pretty much the movie, and then the
Sphere.
sphere.
That's the movie, guys. Sphere is a good movie.
They all forget the top
movie.
keeps spinning, and the sphere flies back into space and explodes into a universe. I don't know what that meant.
And the tops and the cradle and the silver spoon.
NCAA 35, 817.
35, 817, buddy. I fast forwarded just to get your back on that.
Sorry, you might want to say that again because I was talking over you. So.
MPAA 35, 817. For those keeping track at home, we're going to be testing you at the end of the season.
Spheres. The first thing I want to say as we go into the end here, I want to bring up this note I made, and was this movie made on a dare?
Yeah, Michael Crichton said, "I bet you can't turn this
one into a Hollywood
movie."
Bigwigs.
Yeah. He gave it to Spielberg, and Spielberg was like, "This seems really boring.
Not. Yes,
there's no dinosaurs in this."
This is 75 pages long. Also, I don't know what what I'm supposed to do with this.
75 pages. It's probably a huge. Though. If you think about it, it's probably like a crazy long.
It's probably 590 pages.
Yeah, 45 pages are actually like the real pages from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Just like reread it. We never talked about that. The part where he's like finding all the books.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
Oh, it is a book from 1987 just called Sphere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Michael Crichton.
300.
We talked about that in the intro.
No, I know. I thought that it might have been called something else because some.
It's called Orb.
No, like it could have been called like the spaceship that wasn't or something like that. You know what I mean?
Apparently, it was supposed to be silver.
The spaceship that was an orb shape.
It's 385 pages, so we were in the ballpark.
Oh, that's pretty short, actually. Yeah. All right, so I guess we'll go in reverse order this time. Starting with Jason, tell us your thoughts about Sphere.
I like this film well enough. It has some slow parts, but overall, the slow bits actually help build the suspense this movie is trying to create. The twists were pretty obvious, and it didn't really do anything new, but seeing high-tier actors like Dustin Hoffman and Sharon Stone in this setting was unique. As an aside, Samuel L. Jackson was just perfectly Samuel L. Jackson throughout the whole movie, and the knowing that he was doing improv, I want to know in other movies where he's doing improv because he might have been the most seamless. There was also a moment we didn't talk about that was definitely improv, where right near the end they get a computer transmission that's just in broken code, and they're so fed up. And Dustin Hoffman goes, "How are we supposed to read what this is supposed to say?" And then it starts to just change, like it just
it's translating itself.
Deciphers. It's like it's translating itself. And I feel like that was one of those moments that was just like, he reacted to it in real time.
Well, you've just ruined what my review was going to be, which is like I would like a version of this movie where it just translates itself for me.
I'll get to mine.
Okay.
The sets were the draw here, I think. Much like Event Horizon, I enjoy the underwater stuff. Obviously, that was in space, but
space is just underwater.
It's just underwater, but the other way.
Yeah.
I really like the sets in this movie. That I was captivated every time. Like you forget that you're watching a movie sometimes because the sets are so good. The sphere was very 90s CGI, and Sam looked hilarious when he was inside the sphere, but like the practical effect usage in this movie kind of balanced that out. This movie is kind of this is a point. If you guys have ever done mushrooms with like a few people and you get very into the like
Sphere of it all.
The sphere of it all. The like how like how you react to every little thing when you're like on mushrooms with like 3 other people. How it becomes this like whole event. Like it becomes like everything that's happening is part of the mushroom trip. That's what this movie kind of felt like. It felt like they were all just on mushrooms.
Yeah.
It was I found it to be kind of predictable, but some of the twists were kind of like, oh, why didn't I think of that? And what went well were the special.
But they're also like, I could have thought of that. You know, nothing about it is like I could never think of that. It was all like, oh, okay. Yeah.
I give it a pretty high up 3 out of 5. What went well? The special effects and the sets definitely were the highlight for me, and the story was. It was a good plot. It was a decent plot. It was fun and interesting. Even better though, show the fucking squid. What are you talking about? You see it on a radar?
I don't think they had the budget.
They definitely didn't have the budget. And then,
or maybe they tried and they're like, no.
Do not put that CGI squid in this
We got
movie,
some
please.
great jellyfish that look sick.
Yeah.
Queen Latifah's dead body looks great. We don't need a nasty, terrifying, shitty
And
squid.
I give this movie
Reboot squid.
the manifestation of a better movie with the same cast.
Nice. That's a good one. I like that.
Kalen, you are up, buddy.
Oh, hi. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. No, I did. I enjoyed this movie. It definitely more so with giving it another watch. The introduction to the characters and the dynamics between them, like it sets them up perfectly for the audience. I was engaged the whole time, wanting to know what was going to happen next. What went well was the mystery of it. Initially watching it, I enjoyed the first 2 acts better than the third, but then because I was confused, it made me want to go back and try to figure out the puzzle of it all. My even better though, I ended up going with the title cards. There was 1 or 2 that were suitable, but there was like 7 or 8 of them altogether. It didn't do it for me. It's at least a watch, but I want to try and find it to buy. And I give it an event.
Horizon.
An event causing events that create the event.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the one thing that kind of bugs me about Sam Jackson's sort of like theory of time travel in this movie is that he adheres to the Back to the Future rules, which is like, I've never thought that would be how it worked, right? Like I always, even when I was a kid, I was like, no, it's like if you leave here and you go there, then you create a new world where that's like a whole new outcome. Like, and if, like the outcome you left, like it's like the end game. The end game is like the one that I'm like, yeah, that's the one that makes sense.
You'd think that astrophysicist
because it's like if you think about the multiverse,
like, no, that's
like,
not how that works.
A multiverse could be like I wake up and I decide to wear a green T-shirt instead of a red T-shirt, right? Like that's and like because I wore a red T-shirt today, it's the whole world is now different because I wore a red T-shirt. It's not going to be that much different, but it might be slightly like someone else might make a different choice because they saw me wearing a red.
Yeah,
T-shirt.
but in that dimension, horses ride us, so.
I know, but I think up to this point, everybody adhered to the Back to the Future rules in this movie, right? Like when this movie was made. So it's like everybody knows that if you go into the future and you fuck something up, then the future's fucked up. But if you go into the past and you kick your dad in the nuts right before he's about to meet your mom, then you and all your siblings don't exist anymore because she decided to date some other guy who's right next to him. But I'll say that this movie is one of those ones that I think about often, and not like often in the sense that I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to find a sphere under the ground that gave us magical powers that could allow us to make wishes? Basically, that's what it is. Like it's a wish ball, basically, right? But I do think about the idea of like finding a wish ball that you're not able to control the wishes that you make. And everything that you think becomes real. And, you know, if you're a human like me, they think they they kind of go into it at the end of the movie. It's like, if you're a human like me, you're gonna have nightmares. You're gonna think bad things, and if you're not able to harness that ability, you're gonna manifest some really shitty stuff. And I would like to see a movie where the sphere goes into a group of people that are not a bunch of sound-minded intelligent scientists who are able to kind of like ground themselves and think about things logically. And like, what would that look like? It would probably look like that movie where The Purge or whatever. The Purge would happen. You know?
If it were me, there'd be burgers. There'd be pyramids of burgers.
Yours would be Shazam or whatever. Yeah, okay. Yeah, mine would be The Purge. Kaylin's would be Shazam, like candy bars and burgers falling from the sky, and Jason's would be what?
What would it be, Steve? You seem like you had something on the ready. It'd be new Weird Al albums.
It would be everybody looks like a Weird Al video, but they are all in an anime universe.
Yeah, actually, that's not bad. But also, Weird Al puts out a new album even posthumously.
Imagine he made an anime. Anyway, I don't know. It's one of those movies that like I can explain why I like it over and over again, but like I don't know if I even did it in this video properly. Like,
where's your love letter?
Where's my love letter to this movie? I mean, I love being scared, and you know, the environment of this movie makes me scared. The idea that I'm not as smart as the characters in this movie makes me scared, and the idea that like Sam Jackson, the best character in the movie, becomes almost childlike, even like in his demeanor when he's going from unconsciousness to just eating. But his like, you know, his consciousness is taken over by the computer. He's basically the same, and he becomes more jovial and interesting, right, at that point. But he's always been interesting. And I would like to see a movie where each one, this is my could have been better, like a different version of each of these movies where, you know, Sharon Stone went into the orb first, or you know, Dustin Hoffman went in first, or even one where Liev Schreiber went in first, and like to see what the outcome of each one of those would be. And then to think about like, you know, what would happen if Jason went into the orb? What happens if Kaylin went into the orb? And your mind kind of goes wild to think about like what would happen if each person went into the orb. It's a movie that like kind of like lets your imagination go a little bit wild at the end of it. It's not a great movie. It's not a perfect movie, but it is an entertaining movie, and it also makes you feel creative at the end. You're like, I could do this. I could do something like this. I could come up with a story like this. What could have been better was that, but what went well was, I think the direction, the set design, the costume design was fucking dope. I love those scuba suits. They look cool. When it comes down to a rating, though, Jason, you stole my rating. I got to come up with a new one. I wish I could manifest a rating right now. Ugh.
How about how many times Queen Latifah said beautiful?
You know what? This is what I would love to manifest, is Queen Latifah's actual character having the actual written character do what she was meant to do, and not just be like, all right, Captain, and be like, okay, it's really beautiful out here. I would have liked to have seen her do a little bit more, because Queen Latifah is like a powerful presence, and I know that she wasn't at this time, like she was, you know, just getting into acting, but she was in the credits credited as Queen Latifah, which means she wasn't using her real name. She was using her performance name.
Jean Latifah.
Her name's Jean Latifah. But she's also a good actor. Like, and did you hear those death rolls? Holy shit. She was scared. She sounded scared. So, I mean, I guess that brings us to the end. Queen Latifah, we love you here at Hey Did You See This One? And we would love to see you in Sphere 2.
Even Sphere.
Now you got the juice.
Fear the Sphere.
Now you got the juice, Sphere. Now you got the Sphere.
And I guess... Oh, shit, I always forget it.
Just say for me and then for him. Okay.
For me. And you. For me, Steven.
For Jason. For Kaylin. For Steven, I'm Jason.
And for Steven and Jason, what? So wait, what did you say?
I always confuse everybody. I'm sorry. For me, Steven, I am Steven, and for Kaylin, I'm also Steven. Shit.
Now do Jason.
I've said it. For Steven and for Kaylin and Jason.
No, Steve, he didn't do you yet, though. He did him and he did me.
For Kaylin and Jason, I am Steven.
I gotta go to bed.
There we go. I did it right.
Yeah.
For Kaylin and Jason, I'm Steven.
Perfect.
Was it?
Yep.
Was it perfect?
Yes.
It was a perfect circle, except it had wavy ripple, like ruffle chips.
And hey, did you see this one?
And hey, did you see this one?
Hey, did you see this one? Hey, see this one?
He's kind of like down here. Have you ever heard the term overreacting? Or
is there like a high low?
He only talks low though, but then he just
recording in progress.
Whoa, you